A few seconds later, Levi pulled out his phone to check the time and asked, "How about we find a place to sit? I'll have Maverick run through the next scene first." Derek gave him a surprised look. "That wouldn't be right, would it?" Levi smiled gently and said, "The emotional state of a co-star matters just as much otherwise. I might get affected too." After a moment of thought, Derek admitted to himself that he was clearly slowing things down. He worried he'd still be off balance during the read-through and end up inconveniencing others, and besides, two leads spending time together to build chemistry makes perfect sense. Levi even provided a solid excuse for him. "All right," Derek finally agreed. They didn't go far. Just up to the studio's rooftop. The rooftop had been turned into a small garden. A cool breeze swept through, carrying faint traces of floral scent. The sun above warmed the air, but a chill still lingered. Derek pulled his hat up higher and stood at the railing, gazing off into the distance. Levi beside him didn't seem in any rush to speak. He just stayed quietly by his side, glancing occasionally toward the mark on Derek's lip. His gaze was too intense. Derek felt heat rise to his cheeks and shifted his head away awkwardly, trying to escape the attention. After gripping the railing and swaying slightly, he finally spoke slowly. "Do you ever wonder why people sleepwalk?" His question came out of nowhere, but Levi wasn't surprised he'd ask something so unusual. After a pause, he replied calmly, "Dreams are reflections of the subconscious. Maybe there's too much going on inside, and emotions from the day get held back. They can only find an outlet at night through dreams." He paused, his tone still gentle. "Or perhaps some feelings just need a way to come out." Derek lowered his head, staring at the phone in his hand. His fingers lightly traced the screen, but his eyes didn't focus. The first time he noticed Edwin wandering in his sleep, the other man held onto his hand and sat there for a long while, as if clutching something precious that had been lost and finally found. The second time was last night's kiss. He couldn't recall ever seeing such intense emotion on Edwin during daylight hours. Could it be he's unconsciously hoping for something dramatic? Love, conflict, deep feelings? Derek's fingers moved aimlessly across the phone screen, as if using the motion to distract himself from the increasingly strange thoughts in his mind. "Is that why you've been distracted all morning? So it's a personal matter after all?" Levi propped his chin on the railing, tilting his head slightly as he looked at him with a half-smile. Derek hesitated for a moment. "Well, kind of, but not really." With that, he impatiently ran his hand through his already messy hair. "No wonder you've been so stressed." Levi chuckled. "Was it because of the person who gave the gift last time?" Derek glanced at him, suddenly realizing that Levi was the only one among those he could talk to who didn't know about his connection with Edwin. "If you ever want to talk, I'm always here," Levi continued. "If not, just call Chocho up to sing a song. It's better at cheering people up than I am." Derek thought of the cockatiel they both raised like a son and couldn't help but smile. He looked back at Levi, whose expression seemed casual on the surface, yet beneath it was clear warmth and care that touched him deeply. But Derek didn't plan to speak right away. He couldn't just share these tangled feelings he hadn't sorted out, especially not the part involving Edwin and that strange dream from last night. He turned his gaze toward the distant sky, where a sudden wave of unfamiliar emotion stirred inside him. Everything from last night felt like wild tides. Waves that effortlessly swept away the careful path he'd once laid out on the shore. "Actually, nothing much." Derek finally spoke, trying to sound light. "Just some personal matters. Nothing too serious, just a bit tricky to sort through." He still couldn't bring himself to confide in Levi. It was too complicated, too private. Even he hadn't figured out how to face it himself. Levi didn't press further, just gave a quiet nod, as if he understood what Derek meant. "Want to pick a song?" he asked. "No thanks," Derek said. "Mason's so protective of his parrot. If he found out I dragged it up here as part of the mood crew, I'd be getting nowhere near a good meal on set for at least 9 months. The rooftop wind kept blowing, easing some tension but also stirring up more thoughts. "Still," Levi suddenly said, "sometimes the hardest part isn't dealing with feelings themselves, but facing your own true thoughts. You don't have to explain anything. You just need to listen to what you really feel." Derek looked up at him, a hint of confusion in his eyes. What do you mean? Levi gave a small smile and spoke slowly. Like it? Go for it. Don't like it? Walk away, Derek teased. Wow, such a simple idea. But before they'd even had time to relax much, Levi's phone erupted with multiple messages. He gave a helpless wave toward Derek and explained, "Looks like Mason just called off our little break." Derek let out a breath. "No problem. Let's go down." Levi replied with a sure, then added, "By the way, that friend you mentioned who keeps sleepwalking, if it's more than just once or twice, maybe you should think about getting medical advice. I've heard too much of this could affect your health." Derek thought to himself, that's not something he'd need to worry about. The two walked down the rooftop together, and as Levi kept replying to his phone, its vibrations never stopping, Derek stepped into the meeting room just in time to see Mason leaning on the table, one hand, while the other flew beneath it, sending quick messages to Levi. Seeing them return, Mason finally moved his phone back onto the table with a blank expression and asked in a detached tone, "Did you two finish syncing up? If so, let's start Act 3. But the way he said it sounded so odd that even the parrot beside him jumped twice and flew onto Levi's hand. After the morning script reading, there was still etiquette training in the afternoon. That evening, Derek asked Jack to book a hotel near the studio, determined to stay outside for a while, so he wouldn't be reminded of last night every time he saw Edwin's face. Still, coming up with a good reason for staying out had taken him quite some thought. Afraid that Edwin might suspect something, in the end, he brought up Mason, claiming he'd been held back due to his low skill level, and chose to stay behind for intensive training on his own to avoid slowing down the team's progress. But Derek had no idea that as soon as he left the studio in the evening, the fangirls waiting nearby immediately posted his exit photo into their online group. Yet Edwin said nothing, just replied with, "Okay." Derek had just let out a breath of relief when he saw another message appear on the screen. "Did I sleepwalk again last night?" Derek's heart skipped a beat, fearing that Edwin might remember something or notice anything unusual upon waking. A flurry of questions and probes raced through his mind, but after several rounds of internal debate, he ultimately decided to play dumb. "No, why?" Edwin said. "I feel some pain. Where's it hurting? Leg? Or mouth? Could it really be your tongue?" Derek's heart pounded in his chest, and he couldn't help but curse his own stubborn memory. How could he remember every single detail so clearly? "Derek, I'm not sure. Maybe you bumped into something in your room? I didn't feel anything. Just slept through the night and came straight to work this morning." About 10 minutes later, Derek turned on the hotel TV and opened The Blue Bird. 2 more episodes were uploaded tonight, wrapping up the Inshan City arc. The preview for the second act was revealed. The Academy arc, which features many flashbacks of Lucas's youth, hence also known as the Youth Memories arc. Sure enough, when scrolling down, he happened to see the official release of Benjamin's character song. Derek sat in silence for a while, mentally preparing himself before cautiously tapping into it. The song was paired with footage from his final studio recording session. William appeared briefly in the clip. Just seeing his ashen expression made anyone think he had a deep grudge against Derek, as if he'd drag him away and hide him at any moment. To his surprise, the song was actually quite listenable. Far from the chaotic mess Derek had feared, he silently thanked the hard-working editing team for saving him from embarrassment, then switched back to *The Bluebird* main episode, idly scrolling through his phone with that background music playing. As the scene played out where Lucas and Amelia bickered, both of them suddenly drifted into memories of their own youth. Derek couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. It wasn't anything deep. He just happened to see Lucas and Amelia's couple avatar in the Bluebird Plaza. One image showed them pouting at each other, another had them rolling their eyes, but no matter how you looked at it, they were clearly a pair of playful rivals. But the caption above read, "So annoying, I wouldn't even bother with her if it weren't for Benjamin." Upon closer inspection, it turned out the post's tag clearly read, "First Annual Benjamin Fan War Contest Now Live." Scrolling further down, he even spotted comments from both of the main characters themselves. "Austin, great, I can finally see my brother tomorrow." "Charlotte, no worries. My brother's about to go on a trip to the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion with me. You're not coming along." Derek found their childish banter so amusing that he accidentally tapped like on Charlotte's comment before even realizing it. He hadn't even had time to undo it when a swarm of curious netizens flooded the comments section. The buzz around Qing Yao surged once again. Derek sighed as he watched the comments pour in faster than he could react. The flood was already unstoppable, and trying to undo it would only make things look worse. He could only watch helplessly as his accidental tap quickly turned into a spark, instantly igniting all kinds of discussions around Qing Yao. Even Austin posted a tweet within 5 minutes. "Austin, Derek, I'll keep watching you forever and ever." This meme seemed to have been freshly stolen from the fandom chat, with watermarks still fresh. Derek figured this tweet was likely a team decision, since they wouldn't pass up free attention. Perfect timing to boost the show's promotion. Sure enough, as soon as it went live, comments exploded past 10,000, and the related hashtags shot straight to the top of the trending list. He thought for a moment, then decided to play along with Austin's promotional efforts. He immediately shared the post, adding a thumbs-down emoji as a playful gesture. "Derek, Lucas, brother made a mistake. See you tomorrow." That spark instantly burned even hotter with the extra fuel he'd added. But Derek didn't have time to check the comments section. He quickly finished watching the latest update of *, the Bluebird *, then picked up the script for *wind rising through the long night * and read through a few pages, until his eyelids grew heavy and he finally curled up in bed and fell asleep. The hotel mattress was soft, but nowhere near as comfortable as Edwin's apartment. He woke up the next day feeling oddly stiff in the back, and by afternoon, riding practice left him dizzy from being jolted around. The more time he spent away from home, the more he missed his own bed. Hiding like this wasn't a real solution. And besides, the other person involved didn't even remember the incident. It was silly for Derek to be the only one skirting around like that. He comforted himself by thinking it was no worse than being bitten by a dog. Coincidentally, the script read-through sessions were wrapping up, and New Year's Eve wasn't far off. Derek figured Edwin would likely head back to the family ancestral home that night, giving him one more chance to avoid him. But despite Derek's careful planning, Edwin didn't give him a chance to escape. "You free on New Year's Eve? I'm heading back to the family ancestral home tonight. Can you come with me?" His monthly salary wasn't just for playing along with Edwin. It's exactly what he was hired for, and considering Edwin had even transferred an extra recently, this dinner would be unavoidable no matter how much he wanted to skip. Derek let out a sigh and reluctantly replied, "I'm available." The next second, Edwin asked, "What's Mason dragging you into detention for again?" Derek looked confused. Edwin, you haven't been back for days. Has the set been really busy?" Derek thought, not exactly busy. Yesterday he joined Levi for archery practice and spent the whole afternoon relaxing. After all, Anthony was mainly a scholar. Outside of some essential horseback scenes and prison-related performances, there wasn't much for him to actually do. Still feeling bored, Derek had decided to join in just for fun. Who would have thought that playing around would end up revealing Levi's truly impressive archery skills? So sharp it felt like he could hit a target from 100 paces. Derek was utterly amazed, clapping enthusiastically by the side like a startled seal. But none of that made it into his reply. "Derek, I'll be wrapping things up soon. I can make it back by New Year's Eve. I won't miss anything important for Edwin. Why the change?" Derek couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "I just don't want to run into another person as straightforward as Edwin again." Edwin didn't say anything in response. Derek worried he might slip another transfer his way, so he quickly checked his account. His eyes widened instantly. A bonus payment. Derek was stunned, speechless. "Derek, but wasn't that already paid?" Isn't holiday overtime supposed to be extra?" Derek stood up and stretched, ready to gather his things, when he casually glanced at his reflection in the mirror. Sure enough, not many office workers looked put together. He stared at his foggy eyes and worn-out expression, then rubbed his face hard. Soon after finishing filming Wind Rises Through the Long Night, his contract with Edwin would also come to an end. Maybe he should take a trip somewhere afterward, just for 10 or 15 days off. But for some reason, the thought of that contract left a strange emptiness in his chest. After the read-through session ended the next day, Derek took a taxi back to the city center. Jack had already bought his ticket home for the holidays a few days earlier, and Derek didn't ask him to stay. After all, the unlucky college student only had this one break left, and he couldn't bring himself to act like a boss who exploits workers. As he scrolled through his phone on the way, he happened to spot a newly opened dessert shop nearby. Probably because he'd been eating bland meals at the hotel lately, and his brain had been drained from nonstop work. He really needed a little sugar boost to revive his mood. He immediately told the driver to take a detour toward the mall. Before getting out, Derek double-checked his outfit. His scarf covered most of his face. He had a mask on underneath, and a wool cap pressed his hair down, hiding his entire forehead. Only his eyes were visible. He didn't care if someone recognized him. Just not being seen as odd would be more than enough. Derek was wondering whether he should take off the scarf or even his hat when, right after stepping into the mall, a familiar voice suddenly reached his ears. It was his own voice. The neighboring milk tea shop was playing the song he'd casually recorded as Benjamin's character theme. Derek stopped in his tracks, stunned for a moment. His eyes instinctively turned toward the shop. He hadn't expected to actually hear it. Just a casual recording with an awkward tune. But here it was playing in a store at the mall. It's like someone shouting his first online nickname right in front of him. He squinted again and saw several character stands placed outside the shop, with the leading ones wearing outfits and striking poses that looked strangely familiar. A group of girls wrapped in down jackets were excitedly crowded around the stands, taking photos together. The screen behind them was flashing order numbers rapidly. Clearly, the place had sold out. The preparation counter was filled with paper cups, each adorned with carefully drawn illustrations. The staff making the drinks were moving nonstop, and customers waiting at the pickup counter were packed so tightly it felt impossible to move. Derek hadn't quite processed the overwhelming scene when he quickly snapped a photo and sent it to Austin. Could this be a collab with Asterisk the Bluebird Asterisk? Then he dashed straight into the dessert shop. He still couldn't get over the fact that instead of Wishing You Prosperity playing in the store during the Lunar New Year, it was his high-energy electronic track. Even while picking out a cake, he could still hear his own voice echoing all around. A chill ran down his spine, and he pulled his scarf up higher. After ordering a matcha pistachio souffle, he finally managed to shift his focus away from his restless thoughts, only for the cashier to give him an odd, lingering look as if sizing him up, probably because of how noticeable his outfit was. Derek nearly broke into a cold sweat. Luckily, the person didn't recognize him. Derek let out a sigh of relief and rushed through the door. Austin replied right then. Seems like it's a collab with Naishi. What are you doing there? Derek typed back with one hand. If I say I was just passing by, would you believe me? Austin, are you alone? The show's youth chapter has gone viral. Be careful and stay off the main paths. You don't want to get spotted. As soon as Derek read the message, he glanced up and silently typed a few more words. You're too late, little brother. Derek looked at the three girls ahead, each holding a collab bag and a special drink, quietly blocking his way, and let out a sigh. He had been spotted. Lynn, no way. Derek denied firmly. Girl. I hadn't even finished saying the name. How did you know who I meant? Either way, it's not me, Derek said. The other girl glanced at the cake in his hand, tugged her friend's sleeve, and said to Derek, how about this? Just sign a quick autograph for us, and we'll pretend we never saw you. Derek was about to refuse. I'm not, otherwise, I'll shout. Derek fell silent. He gave in. With a resigned gesture, he reached out and took the pen from them, then carefully wrote his name on the branded paper bag. You played Benjamin really well. The girl who had just been threatening him now looked up at Derek's hand with excitement. My friends and I absolutely love the character from the book. When the cast was first announced, everyone in our social circles was heartbroken. But last night, we all came back to life. Derek asked hesitantly. Last night? Yeah, that's exactly when the latest update came out. Your fight scene with Owen was amazing. We haven't seen such a smooth action sequence in ages, the girl beside her added. And Benjamin's theme song is so emotional. Especially that line, to the Swordmaster I pledge my life. 9 deaths won't change my resolve. Every time I listen to it, my eyes get watery. I stayed up late last night watching fan-made videos. Thanks. Still, he should also give credit to William and his team for the great editing work. After a pause, Derek asked, "Would you mind if I wrote one more line?" "No problem. Go ahead and write." So Derek wrote down the line of lyrics she had just mentioned on the bag, and casually asked, "How's the limited edition milk tea?" "It's alright. Benjamin's version is their best-selling oolong flavor, and I actually think it tastes pretty good, but I wouldn't recommend buying from this place. It's a popular spot with crowds, so maybe try another shop instead." Derek thanked her again, then handed the signed bag back. "All done. Can I leave now?" The 3 girls nodded. Derek tugged at his knit cap, about to slip away when suddenly, a loud "wow" erupted from the crowd outside the milk tea shop waiting to take photos, followed by another voice. "Wait, is that really Derek?" His heart sank for good. Derek's mind raced, but his escape plan hadn't even formed yet. The crowd was already gathering fast. A few girls with phones ran toward him in excitement. "It's really Derek. Wait. He's even more handsome than on TV. Can I get your autograph? Can we take a photo together?" Derek felt a chill, suppressing his sudden surge of social anxiety as he forced a polite smile and waved weakly. "Sorry, everyone. I really was just passing by." He instinctively took 2 steps back, but realized the area behind him was already completely surrounded. "It's over." He glanced down at the souffle in his hand, quickly thinking through the situation. Staying here would only draw more people in, and there was a real risk of being filmed and posted online. If it went viral, Julian would have to work through the holidays just to handle the fallout. Should have known better than to give in to this craving. Screams echoed all around, with many people pulling out their phones to record. Some even tried sharing his location on social media. Derek blocked a paper bag that was nearly shoved into his face and pulled his scarf down further, realizing the just passing through act had completely failed. "Hey everyone, calm down. And you there. Please don't post it. If more people come, I might not make it out of here today." The crowd grew even wilder, like a pot of oil suddenly set on fire and completely exploded. Derek tried to say something, but his words were drowned out by their urgent requests the moment they came up. "Just sign your name. We won't take long. I promise. Please, can we have a picture together?" He let out a long sigh, looked down at the cake in his hand and then at the message from Austin on his phone. Then finally gave up. All right, but please don't crowd me." The words had hardly left his lips when paper bags started coming at him from every side. His handwriting was always neat, and he signed with a smooth, controlled motion, but the noise around him didn't let up. Almost as soon as he finished one signature, someone else would hand him something new. "Thank you. Your fight scenes were amazing." A girl clutched the signed cup sleeve tightly, her hands trembling with excitement. Yeah. We rewatched that scene 3 times last night with my friends. It was so smooth." Another girl in a bulky winter coat blinked brightly and spoke fast. "Derek, I admit, I used to shout at you way too loud. Please do more historical dramas." "Derek, thanks." Derek managed a faint smile, but he didn't have the energy to say much more. Derek never thought the Blue Bird would become this popular. He certainly hadn't expected the character he played to be so well received. He clenched his teeth, having already taken off the mask due to the heat, forcing a smile while quietly scanning for an opening. But the crowd's excitement felt like an unyielding net, trapping him right in the center. He'd signed around 10 names, his fingers growing numb. His gaze drifted to the souffle he was holding in his left hand, and a hint of regret stirred inside. He didn't get to eat the cake, but ended up spending more than he planned. "Derek, may I ask a few questions?" A girl with a camera pushed her way forward, eyes sparkling. "Did you actually take acting classes? Who even needs to sign up for that?" Derek mentally groaned, forcing out a reply. "I'm really glad people enjoy it. I'm happy about that, but honestly, I can't stay much longer. I just slipped out here to buy a cake." With that, he gave a slightly helpless smile, his tone softening with sincerity. "Could you let me go now? Otherwise, my souffle might fall apart." The crowd paused briefly, then burst into laughter at the gentle tease. but no one stepped back. If it collapses, we'll buy you another, a cheerful girl called out. Instantly, the others chimed in. Yeah, we'll cover it. Just as Derek felt he was about to reach his breaking point, a low voice echoed from the mall's ceiling speakers. Attention shoppers. Long-term gatherings and filming are not permitted in the mall. Please cooperate with security staff for orderly evacuation. Derek looked up, a spark of hope flaring inside. He turned and saw that mall security officers had already started guiding people at the edges, one leading figure holding a walkie-talkie quickly making his way through the crowd toward him. Derek, the uniformed head of security, squeezed in front of him, lowering his voice. We've been informed you're surrounded. Please come with us. We have a backup exit. Derek felt instantly relieved. A wave of disappointed calls rose from the crowd, mixed with a few shouts. Derek, tell your team to permanently keep that outfit on. And, can you sing Benjamin's character song next livestream? It's amazing. Better not sing it then. Derek gave a sheepish smile toward the source of the voice, kept walking, and waved his hand lightly as a casual reply. With security personnel escorting him, he successfully made his way through the mall's internal staff passage down to the parking level. The mall had even prepared a car for him. Derek got into the vehicle, carefully placed the souffle on the seat, and let out a long breath as he relaxed, slumping back into the seat like soft clay. A few moments later, he glanced at his phone and found several messages from Austin. Were you spotted? The mall is family-owned. I've contacted the manager, and they'll send someone over soon. 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere else. It won't take long. They've sent someone over. Did you see them? The manager just reached out to me. Next time, remember to bring an assistant. Derek gave him a quick update that he was safe, then thanked him sincerely. I made it out. That was terrifying. This is the first time I've ever been in something like this. I'll never go anywhere alone again. You really saved me, Austin. It's fine. The scenery outside the car window blurred past, sunlight spreading soft, colorful patterns across the glass. Derek let out a long breath and shook his wrist, still tingling with soreness. He casually opened his phone, and the trending list popped up on the screen. Derek being surrounded at the mall, trending fourth in popularity. Benjamin's character song made me cry so hard. Ranked 6th, the young master of Qingyao Academy stays number 1. He clicked on a random post and was immediately greeted by photos and videos of fans spotting him at the mall, with comments already buzzing. As soon as that comment appeared, the tone shifted into a full-blown sour grape fest. Derek, where are you right now? Did you get out safely? The moment Derek answered the call, he heard Julian's concerned voice. I'm fine. Almost home, Derek said, glancing out the window. Sorry about this, Emma. Right before the new year. It's okay, Julian said. Here's what we discussed. We're planning to ride the wave of attention and run a giveaway event. We'll need your signature. Let us know if that works for you. Otherwise, we can come up with another plan. Derek asked hesitantly, how many copies do we need? 100 signatures, Julian said. The rest includes video platform memberships and gift cards, plus the perfume gift sets you filmed before. Just treat it as a New Year present for your fans. Derek let out a relieved breath. All right, then he instinctively added, what about the prize budget? Julian replied, we've got that covered. Company expenses can handle it. Don't worry about it. All right, we've set up a trending topic. Might get a bit attention-grabbing soon. Just stay calm. Derek paused, then warmth spread through him. These tactics were still unfamiliar to him, but the way his new agent handled things, calm yet thoughtful, brought him comfort. He couldn't help but think about giving a well-deserved comeuppance to his old manager all the way back in that remote village. Thank you, Emma. It's okay. That's what I'm here for. Not long after ending the call, Derek's signature instantly appeared at the top of trending topics. The most popular post in the thread looked like a giveaway announcement just posted by his agency seconds earlier. As Derek scrolled down, he even spotted Derek's favorite souffle cake as one of the prizes. Fans who hadn't gotten a signature at the mall quickly flooded the comments, and shares surged at an astonishing pace. Derek finally felt the real impact of *, the Bluebird * going viral. so much so that buying a cake turned into what felt like a major public moment. It came with fame and recognition, an unshakable spotlight he couldn't ignore. He couldn't quite describe what it felt like. Like his mind had stepped back to watch himself from afar, observing someone else's life through a godlike perspective. That was strange, but knowing that the character he'd carefully built through hard work had touched so many people, he couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of pride. Still, his plan to step away from the spotlight seemed further and further out of reach. The car came to a smooth stop at the building's entrance. Derek picked up the souffle and stepped into the cozy hallway. He shook his head with a sigh. Oh well, whatever. As soon as Scholars Palace Youth premiered, the viewership for Bluebird hit a new peak. Early on New Year's Day, Oliver sent a red packet in the main group chat, but Derek woke up too late and didn't get a single cent. Meanwhile, the writer Ava secretly sent him a big one in a private message. Ava, wishing our chosen Benjamin a thriving year ahead with even greater success. Transfer $. Derek, still half asleep and hair all over the place, paused for a moment, then replied, "Thanks for the well wishes, Ava. I'll take the good wishes, but I'll pass on the money. Honestly, I wasn't all that eager to receive this particular blessing, but money still has a stronger pull than most things." After sending that, he didn't even check the reply and just rubbed his messy hair before getting out of bed. His hair had grown a bit, without any style. The bangs nearly covered half his face. Derek ran his fingers through it absently, thinking he'd probably get scolded by old-fashioned elders if he showed up at Edwin's place looking like this. He grabbed the eyebrow razor and quickly scraped it on one side, then the other, finally managing to shorten his hair a bit. Then he casually twisted it into place and tied it up at the back of his head with a rubber band. It was definitely neater now, but still looked anything but innocent or well-behaved. He let out a sigh and decided to wear something more understated later. After carefully going through his options, Derek settled on simply wrapping himself in a short white down jacket, layered with a regular sweater and jeans. The outfit had no standout features, yet somehow his face gave it an extra touch of fresh, youthful charm. To be honest, Derek had asked Edwin beforehand what kind of look he preferred. After all, people from their background often came with unexpected expectations. He didn't want to mess up and embarrass Edwin while doing a job for him, but Edwin just shrugged it off, even turning down the idea of wearing a suit. No need for all that formality, that's what he said. So Derek just went with whatever felt most comfortable, especially since winter in a city was freezing, like some kind of icy spell. Just stepping outside for a few extra minutes sent chills straight into his bones. He wasn't one to care much about the cold. Every day he'd go out wearing only pants, and even walking a short way made him worry he might end up with arthritis for life. But surprisingly, while Derek felt comfortable in his choice, the very person who said no need for formality ended up giving him a quiet backstab. By the time Derek finished getting ready, Edwin had already been sitting in the living room for a while. Today he wore a long black-gray wool coat with sharp tailoring and well-defined shoulder lines, its subtle pattern on the collar shimmering faintly under the sunlight. Inside was a matching high-neck sweater, paired with black dress pants and pristine leather shoes, giving him an overall composed and dignified presence, tinged with quiet elegance and distant grace. Derek couldn't help but glance at him a few more times, then mentally calculate how much it would cost to take a taxi from one shoulder to the other. He couldn't help but let out a quiet laugh. Edwin turned his head to look at him. Derek quickly composed himself and said, "I'll go change into something else. Then we can head out." Edwin raised an eyebrow in mild curiosity. "Why?" Derek pointed at him, then at himself and said, "It just doesn't feel quite formal enough." Edwin replied, "It's fine. This isn't a formal event." "Really?" Derek asked back, though inside he was thinking, "I hope I won't be left standing by the side just because my clothes aren't good enough. Only to have you say at the end, 'Mr. Lin, please take a seat after you've nearly finished eating.'" Edwin's wheelchair slowly moved closer as he looked up, studying Derek's lively expression, then reached out and gently gripped his wrist. "Come on. Don't worry, you'll eat well." It was as if he had read Derek's mind. With his boss's promise, Derek didn't bring up changing clothes again. He followed closely behind Edwin's wheelchair, then suddenly remembered something and asked, "So, When I meet your elders later, what should I call them? There won't be too many people, right? I might not remember everyone. No, Edwin said coldly, just my grandfather, Sebastian, and William's mother. In that single sentence, Derek seemed to pick up quite a bit of information, even though he had already figured out Edwin's family connections almost completely on his own. James was waiting in the parking lot, driving. When Derek got into the back seat, he tapped the headrest and gave him a greeting. Happy Lunar New Year, James. As he thought, being an executive assistant wasn't easy. Still working during holidays. Happy Lunar New Year. Derek, I'll drop you and Mr. Edwin off at the old house, then head home myself, James said. Derek gave a small laugh, puzzled why everyone today seemed to understand his thoughts so clearly. Is James from around here? Yeah, I've lived here my whole life. I'm used to it, James said, glancing briefly at his quiet boss in the rearview mirror, clearing his throat lightly. I usually stay until New Year's Eve when Mr. Edwin needs me. Derek gave a soft, oh, then glanced toward Edwin again. He gets overtime pay, Edwin said. Derek. He hadn't even started thinking about it yet. Edwin's eyes swept over Derek's surprised expression, settling on the little ring of hair atop his head. Sunlight streamed through the window, scattering delicate golden glimmers across his strands. The fluffy winter jacket's hood was large, and when Derek leaned back, it covered most of his head. Loose strands kept brushing against the fabric, forming a soft, round tuft that somehow made someone want to reach out and touch it. Of course, Edwin did exactly that. He reached out and gently pinched the back of Derek's head, his fingertip brushing lightly over the soft hair. Then he swept aside the stray strands that hadn't been tucked in, hooked one with a quick flick, and tucked it neatly inside. Derek froze. His nose caught a faint scent following Edwin's hand, like smoldering ebony wood. Intense but not harsh, carrying a quiet, restrained warmth. His heart gave a sudden thump. As soon as Edwin pulled his hand back, Derek instinctively reached up to touch his own hair and blurted out without thinking, I didn't hide anything in there. Looking at Edwin's increasingly mischievous expression, Derek added with a flustered laugh, do I need to go through security screening before visiting your place? Edwin almost laughed at how his mind worked, but he said nothing in the end. Move family's ancestral estate was located on the outskirts of town. Derek had only been there once before, on his wedding day, when it was too dark to see much. Now, for the first time, he could take in every detail. The ornate iron gate with intricate floral patterns slowly swung open, revealing a spacious and elegant traditional Chinese courtyard. Wide driveways lined with diverse greenery. Bamboo and ginkgo trees intertwined gracefully. In the center of the courtyard stood a small water feature sculpture, where water quietly flowed along the natural grooves of dark stone tiles. Derek suddenly felt like Lu Lao Lao stepping into Grandview Garden. Eager to examine everything up close, yet restrained by his own sense of propriety, he followed Edwin closely into the main house. But Derek hadn't expected that just before entering the house, Edwin would suddenly take hold of his left hand. His hands had been numb from the cold wind since getting out of the car, but Edwin's felt unusually warm. Derek was startled by the sudden warmth and instinctively tried to pull away. But Edwin moved faster. A simple ring, matching the temperature of his own fingers, was gently slipped onto his fourth finger. Derek was stunned, and Edwin said nothing as he walked straight to the door. It wasn't until a few seconds later that Derek came back to himself, looking down only then to notice that Edwin also wore a simple ring on his left hand. Derek lightly pressed the back of his hand against his cheek, wondering why warmth had spread so quickly across his face. Even though he knew it was just for show in front of his family, he still couldn't help feeling a little restless. He scolded himself for the reaction, then took a breath and regained his composure. Just as they stepped inside, William was right there in front of them, his hands gripping what looked like a piece of bread. Seeing them arrive, William froze for a moment before stiffly lowering his hands. He gave Edwin an uneasy glance, then turned to look at Derek beside him. But the dog was far more enthusiastic. It charged over in an instant, spinning like a whirlwind as it rubbed against Edwin's leg and stared up with its tongue hanging out, clearly hoping for attention. Bye-bye, William hissed through clenched teeth. Clearly, the dog didn't care about its owner's mood. When Edwin stayed completely unresponsive to its obvious desire, it turned around and jumped straight into Derek's arms. Derek quickly grabbed the dog's claws before they could scratch his down jacket, crouched down to hug it tightly, and ended up getting a full face of slobbery kisses in return. He didn't notice that both William and Edwin had darkened expressions at the same time. William stormed over and yanked his dog away, dazed by the escape. Derek was led to the restroom by Edwin for a quick wash. Derek hadn't yet gotten used to the ring on his finger and nearly got it caught on his nose. When they came out, the white-eyed dog by Bao had already been locked away by its angry owner. William sat cross-legged on the sofa with a clearly annoyed look, while the TV played yesterday's latest update of The Blue Bird. "Sweetheart, did you sing this song? It sounds so lovely." Derek only just noticed that there was a woman sitting beside him. She looked well taken care of, appearing to be in her early 30s. She wore a beige dress and had a jade necklace around her neck. Her lower face closely resembled William's, but unlike William's always irritable demeanor, she seemed gentle and poised. Seeing Edwin, she gave a quiet smile and nodded slightly. Edwin responded with a cool, brief nod in return. She greeted Derek in the same calm and distant manner, offering a gentle nod with a hint of hesitation. Derek suspected they must have met at a wedding reception before, but hadn't exchanged words. She knew who he was, yet didn't initiate contact, likely due to Edwin's presence. William let out a quiet sigh of discontent. "Father and grandfather are discussing something in the study. They'll be down shortly," he said, his tone edged with irritation. After responding, Edwin gently guided Derek to a tea table by the floor-to-ceiling window and slowly poured tea for both of them. His technique was unrefined. Derek guessed he didn't often make tea himself, and his skill seemed even worse than what he'd shown in his performances. Derek took a sip and felt the fine tea was wasted on such a moment. The atmosphere was awkward, as if they were complete strangers brought together by chance. William's mother chatted with Derek while William replied only in fragments, occasionally glancing their way without speaking, almost as if he'd drawn an invisible line between them. Derek couldn't understand why this family dinner was even worth having. With everyone hiding their thoughts, even the finest meal would taste dull and lifeless. To keep Derek from getting bored, Edwin had a plate of sweets brought over. Distracted and lost in thought, Derek ate them absent-mindedly, more eager to step outside and soak up some sunlight. Mainly, he just wanted to explore the parts of the mansion he hadn't seen during his last visit, and sneak a quick play with William's dog when no one was looking. Of course, he quietly shared his idea with Edwin. Edwin glanced up, likely feeling cooped up indoors, and agreed without a second thought. But just as Derek stood up, he heard a noise coming from upstairs. It sounded like something hitting the floor. The three in the living room seemed completely unfazed by the sound. Only Derek was startled out of nowhere, shivering slightly. Seeing that, Edwin gently patted his back in reassurance. Derek turned his head, looking puzzled, and asked, "What was that noise?" Edwin remained calm, his tone neutral. "The upstairs is the study. Probably just a decorative item fell off. Decorative items don't suddenly grow legs and walk to the floor on their own." Derek felt like he'd caught another glimpse into some hidden family matter, his lips pressing together slightly. William slowly rose from the sofa, hands in his pockets, casting a faint glance toward them. His mother remained seated beside him with a calm expression, her face unreadable and her movements still. William said, "I'll go check it out," as if giving Edwin a casual nod. Edwin said nothing. William turned, took a few confident strides, quickly left the living room, and swiftly climbed the stairs. Derek glanced around for a few seconds, then lowered his voice to ask Edwin, "Do you think they'll argue?" Edwin tugged at the sleeve of his jacket, and the wheelchair slowly rolled toward the backyard. "Arguments between them are common." Derek opened his mouth, then closed it again. He decided that, as an outsider, he shouldn't dig into family matters, so instead he bent down to fiddle with the ring on his finger. Edwin led him through a path, hidden among lush plants, where neatly laid stone tiles wound through a vibrant garden. On either side, well-trimmed bamboo swayed gently, their leaves gilded with warm sunlight and whispering softly in the breeze. Derek suddenly remembered. The place where he first arrived seemed to be right here. Derek suddenly noticed that the dog had somehow slipped free and dashed excitedly toward them. Laughing, he crouched down to gently cup the golden retriever's head, rubbing it affectionately before turning to Edwin beside him. "Is your family always this strange?" Edwin looked down at him and gave a quiet nod. "You'll get used to it," Derek thought to himself. One glance was enough. Better not to get used to it. "Sebastian and my mother were married for business reasons," Edwin said, watching Derek's fingers glide through the golden fur. His voice remained calm and steady. "Soon after my mother passed away, he married his current wife." Derek paused to piece together the logic, eyeing Edwin with a cautious expression. "Do you think I don't matter," Edwin said. "What counts is what grandfather thinks. That's why Sebastian still hasn't gained real control over the company." He left part of his thoughts unsaid, but Derek immediately filled in the gaps using details from the original story. In the book, Sebastian's reckless and irresponsible behavior during his youth was briefly mentioned. Thomas never trusted him with real responsibilities early on, and later, due to rumors of an affair, he was given a meaningless title instead. Since Edwin's grandfather had once been Thomas's close comrade in arms, Sebastian felt too ashamed to face his former in-laws after that incident. Once Edwin came of age, power within Mu Group gradually shifted toward him. Sebastian wasn't willing to accept this, so he first tried every possible way to rebuild a relationship with his long-ignored eldest son. But Edwin remained distant and unimpressed. Even as his own father, Sebastian didn't want to push too hard, so he redirected his efforts toward Thomas, hoping the old man might change his mind and give him some share of influence. Of course, he also didn't forget to secretly build support within Mu Group using his limited understanding. Derek recalled that the original story had little detail on this matter, mentioning it only briefly during Edwin's final confrontation with William. It seemed Edwin believed Sebastian was behind the accident that left him partially disabled. With a younger heir gone, Thomas had no choice but to focus his attention on either Sebastian or William, clearly benefiting the father figure in the end. But at the time, that argument was strongly challenged by William. Yet now, as Derek looked up into Edwin's eyes, he suddenly felt that Edwin's suspicion might not be unfounded. He released his grip on the dog's fur and placed a hand gently on the armrest of Edwin's wheelchair, speaking half in jest. "It was tough, but thankfully you grew up just fine." Edwin lowered his gaze, studying Derek's cheerful expression. The plain band on his finger caught the sunlight, glinting faintly. His own hand, wearing a matching ring, twitched slightly, as though wanting to reach out, but then stayed still. After a moment, his throat moved up and down as he said, "If he says anything at the dinner table, just ignore it." Derek looked at him with confusion. To make holding the dog easier, he'd been crouching since earlier. Speaking to Edwin required tilting his head up slightly. From Edwin's perspective, Derek's expression unexpectedly mirrored that of the golden retriever beside him. Innocent and curious, head tilted sideways, eyes wide and glistening in a way that felt oddly endearing. Edwin couldn't resist lifting his hand and lightly brushing it over Derek's head. The cold ring brushed against Derek's earlobe, making him flinch instinctively. Memories long pushed aside surged back into his mind. For a moment, Derek didn't know how to react and simply stood frozen in place. "You just focus on eating enough," Edwin said. "After dinner, we'll leave and go see the fireworks." A few minutes later, Derek was called back by the butler, who had come out searching for them after barely circling the backyard. The sun was slowly setting, and slanted rays of light streamed through the curtains onto the wooden floor. The chandelier in the dining room ceiling resembled a vast, intricate tapestry, casting soft and vibrant illumination. Several decorative paintings framed in dark wood hung on the walls, while a long dining table dominated the center, surrounded by modern leather chairs. Though the combination of styles seemed unusual at first glance, it somehow felt harmonious together. Thomas sat at the head of the table, dressed in a black silk cheapao, his hair streaked with gray. His expression was stern, likely due to having just been upset, and he appeared somewhat withdrawn. Beside him rested an ochre-colored teapot, which he sipped from slowly and deliberately. Seeing them enter, he glanced sharply at Derek before speaking directly to Edwin. "You're here." Then he gestured toward the seat beside him. "Edwin, come sit here." It was the first time Derek had ever heard someone address Edwin so affectionately. This odd contrast made him feel oddly endearing. Derek followed Edwin and took a seat to Thomas's right. Across from them, Sebastian appeared distant and expressionless. The intensity of his frown was nearly on par with his father's. "Who is this?" Derek looked nothing like the man Sebastian remembered from when Edwin first married. Back then, he'd only recalled Edwin dutifully marrying a flamboyant, makeup-loving pink-haired young starlet, completely unlike this composed and fresh-faced young man. So it took him a moment to recognize him. Upon hearing this, Edwin lifted his eyes with quiet amusement, glanced briefly at Sebastian, then gently took hold of Derek's hand resting on the table. "We met once before at your wedding," he said teasingly. "Could it really be that you've forgotten already?" Sebastian finally realized, furrowing his brow as if trying to recall something. "Oh, it's you," Sebastian said at last, managing a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. The distant and cold tone behind it sent a chill down the spine. "I never thought Edwin would bring you here." "Yeah, I was worried he'd be bored at home," Edwin said calmly, gently squeezing Derek's fingers. Thomas paid no attention to the subtle tension between his son and eldest grandson, continuing to sip his tea with a slow, composed voice. "Since the food's ready, let's eat before it gets cold." The table was filled with an impressive spread. Chinese delicacies alongside Western-style roasts, rich truffle soups to unique dessert creations. Everything looked flawless. Thomas occasionally chatted with the two grandsons, while William's mother joined in now and then. Derek felt like the quietest one at the table, but he didn't mind. It was comforting to see that Edwin had kept his promise. But just as the mood at the table remained fairly relaxed, Sebastian suddenly spoke up. "You're Derek, right? I heard you're an actor." His tone was casual, one hand holding a wine glass, his gaze carrying a hint of mockery. Derek blinked in surprise and nodded. "Yes, sir. Calling me sir comes so easily." Sebastian sneered slightly, then turned to Edwin. "I thought you'd call me Dad. Is it because Edwin doesn't want to?" Edwin replied coldly. "He can call me whatever he wants." When he spoke, Sebastian seemed even more energized. Derek noticed him sitting upright with a superior air, and then heard him say in a serious tone, "I'm not saying this as a father, but you've got a heavy burden on your shoulders now. There are so many eyes watching from outside. Saying you like men is one thing, but choosing someone who earns a living through looks, won't that bring shame to the Moo Group?" Edwin glanced at him briefly, then shifted his gaze toward Thomas in the main seat, whose expression was unreadable. He placed his utensils down as if about to speak, just as William's voice came before him. "It's fine, Dad. I'm also someone who makes a living through looks, and I don't feel ashamed of the Moo Group at all. Why should he?" William's tone was relaxed and casual, as if speaking without thinking, just saying whatever came to mind. Sebastian didn't immediately grasp whether his own son was helping him or undermining him. Then William added, "Anyway, Grandpa doesn't expect anything from me, so he probably wouldn't care if I were a source of shame." Only then did Sebastian realize this troublesome son really was siding with the outsiders. His face turned pale instantly, his eyes filled with anger, and the fingers gripping his wine glass grew white, as if trying hard to hold back his fury. A few seconds later, Sebastian forced himself calm, letting out a cold laugh instead. He set down his glass and spoke through tight control. "You're becoming more reckless by the day. I won't stop you from having fun outside, but get back to helping your brother soon." William didn't seem bothered at all, even curling his lips slightly as he looked lazily at his father. "Help? I'm lucky Edwin hasn't found me annoying yet." Then he turned toward the two across from him with a soft smile. "Making money through looks is great. Better than having to please everyone just to survive." Derek quietly lowered his head, sneaking in another small piece of candied taro while no one was looking, chewing it discreetly. He hadn't expected the lotus root to be quite powdery. Swallowing too quickly ended up making him choke. Edwin subtly passed him a cup of tea, and Derek quickly drank it down to ease the discomfort, completely unaware that the entire tense atmosphere at the table had started because of him. He was just thinking, "Now I understand why Edwin said what he did earlier." Even before they entered, Derek had quietly asked Edwin what Sebastian might say at the dinner table, and Edwin replied, "Everything a relic of old-fashioned thinking would say." He'd thought it was an exaggeration back then, but now he realized it was true. Derek took another sip of water, wondering how Edwin had managed to get through all these years. If he were in such a strange family atmosphere, he'd rather stay cooped up in his tiny rented apartment eating instant noodles on New Year's Eve than show up and pretend. No wonder people say the easiest thing in the world is being a father. He didn't show his thoughts on his face. Instead, Derek glanced over at William's mother across the table, and her reaction was somewhat different from what he'd expected. She seemed entirely unbothered by William's outburst, remaining silent throughout their conversation like a graceful statue. He thought that, in a typical story, Edwin's stepmother should see him as an enemy, eager for her own son to take over the family business as soon as possible. But she didn't seem to care at all. During meals too, unless someone directly addressed her, she kept up a calm and gentle appearance. Perhaps because he'd been looking for too long, Edwin suddenly reached out and placed a small piece of lobster on Derek's plate, carefully removing the shell underneath. Derek froze for a second, then turned to look at him. Under the overhead light, Edwin's eyes looked like dark pools, deep and unreadable, and Derek felt a chill, but he didn't dwell on it, quickly lowering his head and taking a bite of the tender lobster meat. No extra seasoning, just the natural flavors of ginger, garlic, and sea freshness. "You're really spoiling him," Sebastian said without pause. "I haven't seen you treat me or Grandpa this kindly before." He reached for the lobster dish, picked out a piece of meat, cracked open the shell with his chopsticks, and continued in a mocking tone, "Still, Dad, I have to say, no matter how capable Edwin is, he's not without limitations. It wouldn't hurt to let someone else share the responsibility." Derek thought, "You might as well just come out and say what you want already. It's obvious enough." But the other person involved didn't seem bothered at all, slowly peeling back a piece of lobster shell before placing the meat into Derek's bowl. Once was one thing, but doing it again. Derek felt genuinely surprised. The man who had been quietly eating now set down his chopsticks, slowly lifting his gaze to reveal sharp eyes like an eagle's. He spoke in a calm tone. "You don't need to say another word about this." But his voice was deep and firm, carrying an unshakable authority. Then he glanced at Sebastian's furious expression before turning his eyes toward Edwin. "I've always had a good sense of people. Edwin is more reliable than you. I feel confident leaving Moo Group in his hands. As for the second son, he's still young. If he ever wants to come back in a few years, Edwin can bring someone else on later." "And you," Thomas said with a dry laugh, "did you finally get tired of that last project? You're a father now. Stop causing trouble for Edwin." And let's talk about Edwin's companion." Thomas turned his gaze to Derek. "As a father, you didn't set the right example before. Now what are you even trying to do?" Sebastian's face paled instantly. His mouth moved as if he wanted to say more, but was silenced by Thomas's piercing stare. No words came out. William seemed completely unfazed, continuing to eat with a relaxed smile on his face as if nothing mattered. Derek glanced sideways, feeling a little puzzled. William's attitude clearly stood in stark contrast to his father's cold detachment and hostility. What was this, anyway? A strict grandfather, an absent-minded father, a laid-back younger brother, and a broken me? Thinking that, Derek couldn't help but let out a small chuckle. Edwin glanced at him, and then scooped another piece of ribeye onto his plate. "Enough, enough," Derek mumbled in a low voice, taking a bite from the lamb chop he hadn't finished yet. "I can't eat another thing." Edwin let out a soft laugh, and for a brief moment, warmth flashed in his eyes. "Stop forcing yourself if you're full," he said gently, yet still added a little more to Derek's plate. "I just didn't want you to feel awkward about eating." Well, it wasn't so bad. Just treating everyone like NPCs in a story made things easier for him. Derek thought to himself. Thomas, being elderly, couldn't eat much. Not long after, he leaned on his cane and left the table, guided back to his room by a butler. Seeing this, Derek started to rise. But Edwin caught his wrist and gently pulled him back down. "Keep eating," Edwin said. "Grandpa always does this every year. Finish the rest at your own pace." Derek gave a soft "oh," and glanced at the quiet family of 3 across the table before finally reaching for his chopsticks toward William's plate. William shot him a quick side-eye. "You really can eat, huh?" Derek picked up the second piece. William rolled his eyes again. Derek couldn't help but chuckle, yet kept moving his chopsticks quickly, as if deliberately trying to annoy William. After all, the atmosphere at this family dinner was so strange that he'd barely be able to eat without finding some distraction. "Does Edwin not feed you at home?" William shot back. "You're eating even when we're talking. Now you're still doing it." Sebastian, sitting nearby, looked at William in mild surprise. Just moments earlier, being unexpectedly interrupted by his younger son had already annoyed him deeply. Now he was even more taken aback to see William actually engaging with the other person. While he didn't know Edwin well, he knew his son quite well. William usually avoided anything to do with Edwin, and at the wedding, his dislike for this older brother-in-law had been painfully obvious. Sebastian frowned slightly, wondering when exactly they'd started getting along. Derek didn't notice the fleeting doubt in Sebastian's eyes. Seeing that Edwin showed no sign of stopping him, he reached out once more to tease William. "Food is meant to be eaten, isn't it? If you're not going to eat it, I will." William let out a soft huff of annoyance and quickly grabbed the last piece of meat from the plate just before Derek's chopsticks could reach it. "Who said I wasn't going to eat it?" Derek reached for a nearby cup of caramel brulee, lounging back in his chair with an easygoing air, clearly playing the generous one who wouldn't bother over something small. William gritted his teeth slightly. Before Derek could even smile, a warm sensation suddenly brushed against his lips. Edwin's fingertip gently traced across his lower lip and asked, "Are you full yet?" Derek froze for a split second. By the time he reacted, William had already slammed his chopsticks down on the table with a sharp snap and stood up. "Sorry," William said. "I'm done eating." Then he walked away from the table. Edwin withdrew his hand, quickly wiping the caramel sauce off his fingers on a napkin. His gaze turned sharp and intense as he looked at Derek and asked again, "And you? Are you full too?" Derek nodded slowly, still dazed. "About done," he replied. Edwin gave a soft reply, took a clean handkerchief, gently grasped Derek's hand, and carefully wiped each finger and every crevice before gently placing it back into his own palm. "Then we'll be on our way." As soon as he finished speaking, Edwin nodded to the butler standing nearby, then slowly guided the wheelchair out of the dining room. Derek walked closely beside him, eyes lowered at their intertwined fingers, a mix of emotions swirling in his chest. He glanced back briefly. The chandeliers still shone brightly, but Sebastian and his wife remained seated at the table, silence hanging thick as ice. Sebastian's expression was grim, as if he wanted to speak but held it in, while his wife quietly sipped her wine, appearing utterly detached from everything that had just happened. Derek suddenly thought of something and tugged lightly on Edwin's hand, whispering with a playful whine, "Aren't I enough to make you proud? You know how many girls online say they'd love to marry me?" He raised his voice slightly. Even if someone married a suitable noblewoman from an equally high family, still didn't bring honor to the clan. Poor thing, my love, no one to set the standard, yet you ended up with me, such a considerate, charming, and successful star, and still people gossip behind your back. Edwin glanced up at him, catching Derek's mischievous wink, and couldn't help but smile. Not until they were settled in the car did he finally speak. Still holding a grudge? Derek recalled Sebastian's pale, furious face when hearing those words and let out a light, satisfied laugh. "That's just standing together with you to settle the score. For both of us," Derek said. Edwin gave a soft chuckle and didn't reply. The car fell into quiet, filled only by the low hum of the engine and the whisper of wind outside. Yet the silence wasn't heavy. Derek gazed out at the sky darkening slowly, streetlights and neon signs flickering on one by one. Red lanterns hung high, golden paper decorations fluttering gently in the breeze, and the whole city glowed with a radiant warmth. Suddenly remembering Edwin's earlier mention of watching fireworks, he asked curiously, "You said fireworks? Where exactly are we going?" But as he turned his head, he met Edwin's focused gaze. How long had he been watching, silently? "Not far," Edwin said. I've already secured a spot. Derek hadn't quite grasped that fireworks needed an arranged place. Just find an open space, stand there and look up, but with Edwin's condition now, they'd likely need a safer spot to avoid being jostled by crowds. A few minutes later, the car slowly pulled up beside the hotel on the riverside. In the distance, lights sparkled faintly across the water. The river shimmered with colorful reflections, and people were gathering on the opposite bank, waiting patiently for the show to begin. Edwin had arranged their spot on the hotel's top floor. The room was simple yet cozy. A soft cashmere blanket lay over the sofa, and a small heater glowed warmly in the corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered an unobstructed view of the entire river, so wide open it felt like reaching out just a little could touch the sparks soon to bloom across the night sky. By the window was a small balcony where the wind was surprisingly strong. Derek only stepped out for a second before being forced back, shivering from the cold. "Is this all a bit too fancy?" Derek said with a light-hearted smile. Edwin smoothly guided his wheelchair inside, glancing briefly at the setup. "As long as it's comfortable, that's enough." Derek sprawled casually onto the soft cushion by the window, joking, "Back when I was outside surrounded by crowds, this is the first time I've ever had such a treat." Outside the window, distant lights shimmered on the river's surface, and occasionally, small boats adorned with colorful lanterns drifted slowly by. Edwin picked up 2 blankets and maneuvered his wheelchair close to Derek. One was gently placed over Derek's head, the other draped across his own legs. "Does Edwin always watch fireworks like this every year?" Edwin glanced down at him. "No, used to be alone. Never felt much interest. Usually after dinner at the old house, he'd go straight upstairs and head to bed. Most of the time, he just went through the motions, didn't care much for rituals. Thought they were pointless, but things are different now." Derek blinked slightly, surprised by the reply. He leaned back against the window, his head resting lazily on the glass, and said offhandedly, "So this year's only because of me?" The moment he said it, he felt the atmosphere shift. It came out a little too suggestive for comfort. Edwin didn't answer right away, his eyes growing darker for a moment before he softly said, "Yes." That single word landed like a stone in Derek's heart, sending ripples across its surface. He suddenly felt uneasy and quickly turned away, pretending to look intently at the riverbank opposite, pulling his blanket tighter around his head as if trying to act casual. "Well, I'm truly honored." Edwin watched him fidgeting in that awkward way but said nothing. Not long after, the first burst of fireworks exploded. The sky instantly lit up with dazzling bursts of light and color, as if painted by fire itself. Golden streaks shot through the air like falling stars, their echoes ringing out one after another, making even the surrounding air tremble. Derek leaned against the edge of the bed, completely absorbed in watching the scene outside. His face was illuminated by the glow, his eyes reflecting a sky full of shimmering light as if filled with stars. So lost in the moment was he that he didn't notice when Edwin quietly rolled closer. "Do you like it?" Edwin's voice came softly from nearby, deep and gentle. "Yes. It's amazing." Derek nodded instinctively, then couldn't help but add, "It's way better than the fireworks back home. The space is too small to find a good spot, and they're over in just minutes." He didn't realize he'd said something off, and Edwin didn't ask. He quietly studied Derek's profile, his deep eyes like the ocean depths or a quiet night sky. A few seconds later, he murmured softly, "It really is beautiful," but the words were quickly drowned out by the roar of fireworks. Derek only caught faint echoes and couldn't make out what was said. He turned his head in confusion, and a massive golden firework soared into the sky, glowing like a shooting star before instantly blooming into a dazzling burst of light. The crowd along the riverbank began cheering and counting down. Derek saw Edwin part his lips, but the loud voices and the explosions from the fireworks drowned out every sound. "What?" He leaned in a little closer, asking blankly. Edwin lowered his head slightly, moving close to Derek's ear. The crisp, woodsy scent of his cologne enveloped him. Derek's heartbeat skipped, as if all the surrounding noise had vanished at once. He could hear a clear, cool voice speaking right beside his ear. "Happy New Year, Derek." On the first day of Lunar New Year, Levi slept in until late afternoon before finally waking up. He rubbed his eyes drowsily and reached for his phone, immediately seeing dozens of messages from Derek on WeChat. The top few messages had been deleted, followed by a long string of emoji packs sent in the early hours, the time when he was probably still with Mason. He stared at his screen in disbelief, swiping through several pages before finally finding the text message. Derek, sorry, I can't sleep. I have a friend, really a friend, not made up or imagined. He thinks there's someone who might like him. Not that it's serious or anything, but still, he feels like this person shouldn't really be interested in him. It's not because he lacks confidence, but more like fate seemed to have set it up so this person should be with someone else instead. But they've shared a kiss before on New Year's Eve night. They watched fireworks together at a hotel, and even got him a really thick red envelope. Wait, hotel kind of feels off. But honestly, it was just two people lying under blankets, talking the whole time. They've lived together for a while, and at first he only saw the other person as a regular roommate. Then things changed unexpectedly. Well, that kiss was also an accident. My friend's been holding back on telling them about it, afraid it might ruin their friendship. After a few minutes, he added, forget it. I just can't figure this out. No, I mean my friend is the one who's confused. Half an hour later, I'm still wide awake, but the fireworks were actually really beautiful. I just wonder, why watch them at a hotel? And the person was pretty nice too. That was his exact words. I'm just relaying them for you. Levi almost burst out laughing. The drowsiness in his mind vanished instantly. He'd only mentioned it casually during their last chat, and never thought he'd actually get a response. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure how to reply to Derek. Then, after holding back for a moment, he couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. This person was using a clumsy friend excuse, making up contradictory and inconsistent stories, even trying to hide behind the phrase, relaying on behalf of someone. Levi almost wanted to ask back, wasn't that friend actually you? But he worried the other person might get upset and block him instead. He paused to think for a moment, then started typing his reply. Hey Xiaoxie, your friend's story is actually pretty interesting. Why not just ask the other person straight out if they like him? After sending that, he felt it wasn't enough and added, but from how things seem, the other person probably likes him. Otherwise, why would they stay together at the hotel watching fireworks? By the way, did they spend the night there too? The message hadn't even finished sending when Derek replied quickly, no. They went back home afterward. Derek, I'm so exhausted. I didn't wake up until now. Derek, he was hesitant to ask directly. What if he misunderstood and the other person denied it? That'd be really awkward. Plus, their relationship is a bit complicated. Kind of like boss and subordinate. The other guy's almost like half his boss, so it's hard to just come out and ask. Levi thought back on the upper management at Infinite Entertainment. Most of them seemed to be middle-aged men with round bellies. He couldn't picture anyone matching Derek's description. Xiaoxie, so what was it like when they, was it just a misunderstanding after the other person got drunk? Derek stared at those words for a moment, then felt oddly grateful toward Levi for being so understanding. Almost as if he'd already thought up an explanation, he curled tighter in the blanket and turned over in bed. Hearing the door close outside his bedroom, he guessed Edwin had left, then slowly pulled himself off the mattress. Derek, pretty much just a dark, quiet night with no lights on. The other person just couldn't hold back and kissed him suddenly. My friend didn't have time to react and ended up going along with it without really thinking. He was bothered by it for days afterward. Derek, that person probably doesn't even remember kissing anyone that night, or who they kissed, for that matter. Levi asked, what did your friend feel like at the time? Derek thought it over, then typed, it was kind of soft. Derek, the way they kissed wasn't bad either. Xiaoxie, have you ever thought about how a normal person would react in this situation? Derek, Xiaoxie. A normal person would just think the guy's acting crazy from being drunk, then push him away. Derek, so you're saying my friend isn't quite normal? Levi let out a weary sigh. What I mean is, your friend's reaction toward that person was unusual. Derek stared at the words for a moment, muttering under his breath. Where exactly is it abnormal? But deep down, an odd feeling welled up inside him. He felt strangely uneasy. He thought, Edwin has a weak leg. How could he really push him away? What if something went wrong? Then again, he'd felt frozen at the time, completely unable to react. How could he have thought about pushing back? And he had tried, hadn't he? But Edwin was so much taller. He simply couldn't do anything. The kiss was already done, and the other person didn't even know what they'd done. There's no way he could just yell at Edwin the next day for no reason. Derek grew more and more uneasy, crouching low and peeking around the bedroom doorway to make sure Edwin wasn't anywhere in sight before finally stepping out to pour himself a glass of water and sit on the sofa, sipping it slowly. Derek slumped back on the couch for a while, then gave in with a resigned reply. Maybe, after all, he's good-looking, wealthy, and has helped him quite a bit. Anyone would be moved by that, Derek, but he feels this current situation is just right. He doesn't want to change it, and he's afraid of being changed by someone else. Derek kept recalling that night's dream. The vast courtroom made him feel tiny, the air as cold as ice, a mechanical voice echoing in his ears. The racing heartbeat was real enough, yet everything around him felt just as true. He also remembered what Edwin had said, how he could walk perfectly fine but still couldn't stand up. Derek wasn't fully convinced by the idea of fate, yet he couldn't help wondering if they truly could defy a destiny someone else had set for them. Little Sia, I don't think you're the kind to overthink things. Still, I believe sometimes feelings between people don't need solid logic or too much worrying. Derek's fingers moved slowly across the screen before he finally typed out a response. So what should he do? Little Sia, be bold. Just go straight and ask if you like me. If you're too nervous, play dumb and wait for the other person to break the silence first. Little Sia, honestly, this kind of uncertainty is actually nice. I really enjoy it. That's when I'm at my best, pretending not to know anything. Derek chose the second approach. That night, he couldn't get a good sleep. His mind kept drifting between the fireworks bursting outside during Chinese New Year's Eve, Edwin's voice blending with his racing heartbeat, and the quiet darkness of the bedroom where their lips had brushed against each other, soft and fleeting, leaving only warm breaths tangled together in silence. The next morning, he stirred awake drowsily, washing up before passing through the dining area. There was Edwin sitting at the table sipping coffee, a tablet resting beside him, sunlight streaming through the window and gently touching his profile in a quiet, peaceful glow. Derek instinctively slowed his steps, grabbed a glass of milk, and sat across from Edwin. He glanced over nervously, noticing Edwin seemed to be reading something on the screen. He hesitated, almost saying hello. But just then, Edwin lifted his head as if sensing his gaze, and gave a faint, barely noticeable smile. Awake! Edwin's voice remained calm and soft. Derek nodded, taking a sip of milk. A sudden urge flashed through him, almost saying, "You," but the words stopped at his lips. He looked up into Edwin's eyes, which held a quiet smile and a hint of curiosity, as if waiting to hear what he'd say. "What is it?" Edwin set down his tablet, speaking gently. Derek opened his mouth, frantically searching for the right words. "And nothing. I just wondered if you've been pretty busy lately." Edwin narrowed his eyes slightly, as though he saw through Derek's nervousness, but didn't call it out. Just gave a soft nod. "Yeah, not too bad. I have to attend a reception tonight. Might be late coming back." Derek let out a quiet breath, quickly lowering his head to keep drinking milk, hiding his nervousness. "The things you asked me to handle earlier are nearly done. I've sent the documents your way." Edwin paused, then added, "Do you need any more help with what comes next?" Derek thought for a moment and said, "I'll take a look first." Edwin nodded without pressing further, turning his gaze to the window as if lost in thought. Derek finished his milk and was just about to stand up to go back to his room and change when Edwin suddenly spoke. "Do you have a shoot today? What time are you leaving?" Derek blinked, surprised that Edwin had asked. He hesitated before replying, "Yeah, around 10 o'clock probably. Emma will send someone to pick me up." Edwin said calmly, "I'm heading out soon. Let's go together." Derek turned sharply toward Edwin, his expression showing surprise and unease. He instinctively waved a hand. "I don't want to trouble you." "No trouble at all. Just on the way," he said, rising from his seat and adjusting his cufflinks. "James will be downstairs soon." Derek almost protested again, but the words caught in his throat. All right. 10 minutes later, Derek had changed into his clothes and was heading downstairs with his bag when he found Edwin already seated in the car waiting for him. The black sedan sat in the sunlight, its body shimmering softly. Edwin, dressed in a sharply tailored suit, leaned quietly against the back seat, looking almost like a model stepped out of a fashion magazine. Derek lowered his head as he got into the back seat and fastened his seatbelt. "What are we shooting today?" Edwin asked. "A magazine cover, with Austin," Derek said, rubbing his face which had stiffened from the wind. "Just doing our part. Nothing special." The photo shoot was a last-minute addition. After the release of *The Young Birds* Academy Boys series, it became an unprecedented hit, with topics about Benjamin and Lucas brothers consistently topping trending lists every single day. Julian and Austin's team had originally planned to spend the entire Lunar New Year holiday doing a live stream watching show together or filming a joint video. Then suddenly, a well-known fashion magazine in the industry sent out an invitation, so they ended up going along with it without hesitation. Edwin gave a soft and didn't press further. When the car pulled up to the shoot location, Derek was just about to unfasten his seatbelt when Edwin said, "I'll have my driver come get you afterward." "No need for that," Derek quickly refused. "I can make it back on my own." Edwin raised an eyebrow slightly, his gaze drifting over him like he was observing a nervous cat. "It's not much trouble. Your assistant hasn't returned from vacation yet, and at this hour, your agent probably wouldn't be able to arrange another ride either." Derek was speechless for a moment, then muttered quietly, "All right then." Edwin glanced at his uneasy expression and couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. "All right, get out. Don't waste time." Derek nodded quickly, pushed open the door, took a few hurried steps inside as if fleeing, then instinctively glanced back. Edwin's car still sat where it was, the rear window shielded by tinted film, hiding whatever might be happening inside. Yet Derek couldn't shake the feeling that someone's eyes were watching him from behind the covered glass. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned around, following the staff's directions as he made his way through the lobby toward the VIP elevator. Suddenly, from outside the building, where a crowd had been waiting, came an ear-piercing shout. "Baby, look this way." For the first time being so close, Derek suddenly felt his face flush. He stumbled slightly on flat ground but caught himself against the entrance gate, then quickly lowered his head and slipped into the elevator, dreading that cameras outside might catch his reaction. The elevator rose smoothly. He glanced at the staff member standing nearby, trying hard to keep a neutral expression, then pulled out his phone to check Weibo. Last night's special update of the Blue Bird introduced the spirit entity, known as Yenyu, for the first time. No wonder there was such a large crowd outside. He was about to switch to the video app to watch the official episode of The Blue Bird when the elevator chimed and stopped at the filming floor. Derek had no choice but to put his phone away and follow the staff into the makeup room. The warm air from the AC instantly chased away the chill outside. Austin was seated in the makeup chair, with a stylist adjusting his hairstyle. He leaned back casually, and when he saw Derek enter, a faint smile appeared in his eyes. "What took you so long?" Derek noticed an iPad placed on the makeup table in front of him, displaying a quiet forest scene deep within misty woods. "Traffic was slow for a bit," Derek replied, pulling up a chair and sitting beside him. Through the dense layers of thick trees revealed by the camera's movement, a ruined temple hidden in mist came into view. The curved eaves formed eerie lines against the sky, while gray tiles showed traces of damp moss after rain. A thin veil of fog wrapped around it like an unspoken secret. As the shot moved upward, the first thing to appear was a pair of boots with dark red patterns. The long legs inside the boots dangled carelessly, and a bell hanging from his waist jingled softly as it swayed. The camera slowly panned upward, revealing Yenyu's slender, relaxed figure standing under moonlight. His long robe, a mix of black and red, hung loosely over his frame, the inner shirt collar left open just enough to expose pale, smooth skin. One hand rested on his knee while the other toyed with an ornate golden bell. A breeze brushed past him, causing the robes to flutter. The mask on his face, featuring a greenish hue and sharp fangs, glinted in the moonlight, its features obscured except for two strikingly beautiful yet cold eyes visible beneath. The mist around him seemed drawn to him, wrapping tightly like an invisible chain. He glanced toward the distant woods, his eyes forming a faint curve. Though he had a man's figure, his voice when speaking was soft and indistinct. Neither fully male nor female. All mortals fear death. Even the most favored sons of heaven cannot escape it. Derek couldn't help but hold his breath, his eyes locked on the screen. Austin noticed his gaze and spoke gently. "What's so captivating? You're the one who played it yourself, aren't you?" Derek brushed his fingertip against his earlobe, too shy to admit he'd suddenly felt a surge of self-admiration. Realizing how strikingly intense that otherworldly aura on screen truly was, and quietly marveling at just how talented he must be. "I didn't get to watch it last night. I'm glad I can catch up while getting ready. Just borrowing a little time with you." Austin let out a soft laugh and gently slid the tablet closer to him. "I didn't get to see it yesterday either. Mom and Grandma did, though. They asked me why you were working so hard, playing 2 roles. Derek said, "You didn't tell them I actually had a 3rd role?" If it weren't for Luna's appreciation, that 1-month shoot would have stretched into 2 months. The makeup artist chimed in with a playful tone. "Speaking of which, I saw so many fans hanging around online this morning. Ever since last night's episode aired, the internet's full of people obsessed with Derek's looks. When I checked my friend circle this morning, everyone was crying out wife." Realizing he'd said too much, the makeup artist quickly stopped himself and gave a nervous little smile toward Derek. Derek remained expressionless. "It's fine. I've already heard it so many times downstairs that I'm starting to feel like I don't even recognize the word anymore." Seeing that Derek didn't seem bothered, the makeup artist grew bolder. "The demon's design is truly stunning. My colleagues in the industry have been raving about it ever since the first look came out. Derek has great facial features, and the makeup perfectly highlights his strengths. No wonder the online buzz is all one way. If I search through our group chat history now, I'd probably find hundreds of wife mentions." Derek glanced at the stream of pop-up comments above the screen, guessing that even if he blocked the keyword in the main broadcast, he'd still end up filtering out hundreds of wife messages. It's hard to imagine how long it would be if they were all strung together. Maybe even wrap around the earth several times. The demon on screen quietly watched the distant forest, vanishing into shadow like a predator waiting for prey to walk right into its trap. He saw Lucas and Amelia drifting apart within his illusionary maze, watched as Lucas stepped into the carefully laid ambush, then leapt from the rooftop, light-footed and effortless. The bell he'd been spinning suddenly stopped, the clear chime cutting off abruptly, while his striking eyes narrowed slightly. "That waist is absolutely flawless. Human nature is just true flavor. Who would have thought I was mocking Derek just a month ago?" Sobbing, taking my wife away. If I were Lucas, I wouldn't have been able to resist either. I don't know about Lucas being caught off guard, but Austin definitely looked genuinely stunned. His ears turned red for real. "Ah!" Derek instinctively turned to look at Austin's face after reading the last comment. The other man still sat calmly against his chair, jaw tightly set. But beneath the curling ends of his hair, there was indeed a faint hint of pink. "What are we going to do about such a sensitive complexion?" Derek teased with a bright smile. Austin pressed his lips together, muttering under his breath, "You're not exactly blameless. You were practically glowing red when you first walked in." Derek paused, then leaned back casually and lied with a calm expression. "I was just chilled from the cold." An assistant knocked gently on the door and peeked in. "You too, get ready. We can change now." They stood up at the news and walked into their respective dressing rooms one after the other. The shoot leaned toward a modern Chinese aesthetic. Derek put on a white suit with emerald bamboo vines climbing from his chest to his shoulder. A golden belt wrapped around his inner layer, cinching his waist into a slender silhouette, perfectly matching Benjamin's image of a dignified, gentle man like a bamboo stalk. Austin's outfit was the complete opposite. A dark suit adorned with deep crimson cloud patterns that seemed to flicker like flames across the fabric. Silver embroidery outlined his cuffs and collar with delicate detail, while an antique gold belt emphasized his sharp, intense presence. The assistant called them over to the set. The studio had already been transformed into a Chinese courtyard scene. Vast bamboo silhouettes in the background, red brick archways, and a pond with gentle ripples in the foreground. Light streamed in from the side, creating a soft, dreamlike atmosphere reminiscent of the garden Lucas, often remembered from the film The Bluebird. They'd been working together for 2 months, and after spending time playing games and training on horseback, they'd finally developed a natural rhythm. Without needing direction, they could instinctively respond to each other's expressions and movements, adjusting their roles smoothly and effortlessly. For example, when Austin leaned against one side of the bridge, hands in pockets, head slightly lowered with a lazy, aloof air, Derek would step forward with a warm smile, lean down, and glance up at him casually, as if asking, "What's Lucas upset about this time? Why won't he even acknowledge me?" The scene was brimming with storytelling energy. The photographer couldn't help but praise, "Perfect! This mood is exactly right." With the shutter clicks coming one after another, each frame was captured in still life. Without needing many words, they moved together like a well-tuned pair, glancing at each other, standing side by side or one behind the other. Finally, they even picked up prop swords to film a modern-style duel scene between Benjamin and Lucas. Derek could already picture the online reaction when the video dropped. The comment section would be buzzing with excitement. The shoot lasted several hours, wrapping up only as dusk fell. The editor clapped once, satisfied. "This set turned out amazing. Great work, you too." Derek took the water from Austin and gulped it down, thinking to himself, "Not hard at all. As long as the payment's good." He turned down Austin's invitation for dinner that night, then stepped into the elevator together after removing his makeup. Edwin's car was parked at the underground garage entrance. A driver Derek had never seen got out and gave a slight nod. "Derek, Edwin asked me to pick you up." Derek paused for a moment, then rubbed his neck awkwardly. He actually remembered. Austin stood nearby, hearing that, and said with a faint, knowing smile, "He seems to care about you." Derek didn't reply, said his goodbyes, and ducked into the car. Just as he shut the door, he thought he felt Austin's curious glance lingering on him. The inside of the car was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine. Derek leaned back in his seat, watching the cityscape blur past the window, his fingers slowly swiping across the phone screen. The magazine's official account had already posted behind-the-scenes clips from their recent shoot, and it had climbed to the top of the homepage. He scrolled through the comments section casually. Sure enough, it was already flooded with excited replies. Derek scrolled down to the bottom and couldn't help letting out a quiet laugh. Then he froze, staring at one comment that read, "Someone caught high-quality motion shots outside the main building today." When Derek was called wife, he looked so shy it was adorable. Just then, Edwin's phone call came through unexpectedly. "Tired yet?" Edwin's voice came through the receiver. "Not really. Today's shoot went pretty smoothly." Derek replied, "I had James put a dessert in the fridge for you. You can grab it when you're ready." Derek wasn't sure if the treat was meant just for him, but after a long afternoon at work and his stomach loudly reminding him it was hungry, he reached over to pull up the seat back. But before he could even open the fridge, Edwin's voice suddenly echoed in his ear. He said, "Honey." Derek's ears turned warm, and his face instantly flushed. A soft laugh seemed to come through the receiver. Then Edwin spoke in a low voice. "Why do they all call you honey? You should only have me as your official partner. Shouldn't it be me saying it?" "Derek, I never want to hear the word wife again in my life. Just let me disappear." "What's wrong?" The typing indicator appeared 5 or 6 times on the chat screen, then disappeared just as many times, repeating for about 3 minutes before Derek replied calmly, "Nothing much. Did Mason arrange our hotel booking? I'm ready to join the team now. Right this second. I really need to get out of this city. Hey, why so rushed all of a sudden? Little Sia, you saw the Weibo comments, right? Just being called wife. We've all been teased like that before. It's not a big deal, but today, someone actually showed up at Maverick's live stream asking if they could set up a few scenes for you in the long night preferably with that kind of outfit, the one from Inshua." Derek glanced at his phone again and noticed the conversation with Levi had once more switched back to honey. He felt like he was about to snap. No. just suddenly feeling super eager to get back to work. I really need to jump into the project as soon as possible. I'm already on site. The props team's still setting up. If you want to come, it's fine by me. We can run through a few scenes early if you'd like. Hearing that, Derek let out a long breath and packed his things that very evening. Straight out of town. Of course, before leaving, he sent Edwin a quick message. Thanks for the cake. It was delicious, but the production just called me in early, so I've got to leave right away. Please don't drink too much, and be careful getting home tonight. Edwin replied shortly after. All right, Derek had been resting at the hotel for several days, waking up each morning to memorize lines. He also accompanied Levi and Mason on multiple visits to the filming site before finally arriving at the official launch ceremony on the 8th day of the Lunar New Year. A chill hung over the square of the Jisha Academy, as if the air itself had frozen into a thin layer of frost. Derek was pulled awake early in the morning, half-dazed while getting his makeup and costume on. By the time he arrived at the set, he still hadn't fully come around. All he knew was that cold winds swept in from every direction, and even his heavy coat couldn't keep them out. He kept hunching his shoulders and shivering. He hadn't attended the launch event for the Bluebird before, so he wasn't sure about the procedures. He followed Levi step by step throughout the process. During the incense ceremony, he nearly tripped over a carpet and almost ended up with ash all over his hands. It wasn't until the loud crackling of firecrackers exploded right beside him that Derek finally came fully awake. The first scene to be filmed was a pivotal moment between Gabriel and Anthony, their on-screen confrontation, and also one of the most crucial scenes in the first part of the movie, Closed City, the classroom debate. This scene marked their first clash between idealism and realism. The path ahead for both characters, already diverging, was becoming clear. On-site crew members worked calmly and efficiently to prepare for filming. Derek and Levi went through the scene's blocking movements at their designated positions once more. In the script, Gabriel initiated all interactions with Anthony. The well-off young nobleman seemed to have no sense of boundaries. He stepped into Anthony's life boldly after saving him once, insisted on building a friendship without permission, and even brought him forward to meet his own teacher on his own initiative. Yet thanks to Gabriel's protection, Anthony transformed from someone once mocked and teased by noble-born youths into someone simply overlooked. Like a figure no one noticed at all. Gabriel was like the sun, but Anthony wasn't a moon. He was wild grass growing in a dark marsh, shy of the light, yet strong and thriving with just a little care. Mason lounged lazily behind the monitor, but his pair of almond-shaped eyes were intensely focused. Once all the crew was in place, he spoke firmly. Action! The wind made the wooden window frames creak, and morning light streamed through the eaves. Settling on the desk by the window, Gabriel rested his head on one hand, his pen moving lazily, while the teacher droned on above him, and whispers from idle noble youths echoed behind. He glanced sideways. Amid such dull talk, Anthony remained perfectly upright, like a straight young pine tree, his pen never stopping, each character written with careful precision. Gabriel let out a yawn, just as the teacher spoke up. Today, let's discuss something different. Curious, he lifted his head. Let's talk about what makes a wise leader. The students in the hall exchanged puzzled looks, and murmurs spread quickly through the room. Soon, a clever nobleman from a powerful family spoke up. Our current emperor is the wise ruler. Gabriel discreetly covered his mouth with his sleeve and muttered in disgust, secretly rolling his eyes, but his small gesture didn't escape the teacher's sharp gaze. His ruler tapped the desk sharply, and a pair of piercing eyes turned toward him. What do you think, Shinji? Gabriel didn't flinch when called upon. Calmly and deliberately, he stood up, adjusting his slightly wrinkled robe as he did so. A wise ruler brings blessings to the people and wins over the world through virtue, he said, his voice clear and bright like a refreshing breeze. Anthony kept his head down, studying the text before him. As Gabriel continued speaking confidently, the teacher's expression softened with approval. Normally, he wouldn't have spoken up like this, but yesterday, he had overheard that a high-ranking guest had arrived at the academy, and today, that person was sitting behind the screen. Unlike his fellow students from noble families, who could live comfortably off their family's legacy even if they did nothing at all, he couldn't afford to rely on privilege. He had no choice but to depend solely on himself. As soon as Gabriel finished speaking, he quickly countered with, "Not quite." His sharp, piercing eyes held a cold gleam, like a still, dark lake with no trace of ripples, so deep and shadowed it made one uneasy. A true leader does not seek the people's affection. He knew who was sitting behind the screen. The Crown Prince, recently criticized for harsh conduct just days prior. Anthony deliberately raised his voice, speaking clearly and firmly, a stark contrast to his usual quiet demeanor. Even Gabriel was taken aback, unsure why Anthony would speak up so suddenly. Virtue may be soft as silk, but power is forged in iron. Only the strong can rule the world, and only strength commands loyalty. His tone remained calm, yet his voice carried an unfamiliar chill, like frost descending without warning, silencing the entire classroom for a moment. Students lowered their heads in silence, holding their breath. Only the noble figure behind the screen showed no change, quietly pressing the scroll in hand. Gabriel frowned slightly and said, "Anthony, your words sound rather harsh." Though his smile remained gentle on the surface, his eyes now held a new seriousness. He slowly turned around, hands folded together, gazing at Anthony with clear, steady eyes like polished jade. "If only strength can rule the world, then aren't the safety of the people just sacrifices in power struggles, slaves beneath chains? Power over others is the way of a tyrant, not a wise ruler." Anthony looked up at him with cold detachment, his lips slightly curved into a half-smile. His fingers lightly tapped the scroll, producing distinct sounds like distant drumbeats. "A tyrant and a wise ruler are only separated by a single thought. What you speak of, benevolence spreading across the land, is too idealistic, merely an empty dream that stands too high to last." His words were blunt and unyielding, filling the classroom with tension. Like quiet storm clouds gathering, the teacher's expression shifted slightly, yet he said nothing. Behind the screen, the noble figure gave a faint, barely noticeable smile, casually sketching on the scroll. "I disagree," Gabriel said calmly. "The peace and prosperity of all people should never be just a tool in a ruler's policies. A true wise leader must place the world at their heart, the people at their mind, not power above all." Anthony suddenly smiled at him. His striking features were split by sunlight into sharp contrasts, like a venomous snake lurking in a shadowy forest. He spoke slowly and deliberately, each word clear. "Xingji, what you describe is the path of a sage, not a ruler. How could he protect his vision if he lacks the strength to hold back surrounding lords?" Despite speaking in an unusually calm and gentle tone, it sent a chill down everyone's spine. Gabriel narrowed his eyes slightly, the warmth in his smile fading. He stepped forward, meeting Anthony's gaze across the desk, speaking with firm resolve. "Power may suppress for a moment, but it cannot win hearts. A true wise ruler wins people over through virtue, making common folk respect them and lords trust them. They don't obey out of fear, but choose to follow willingly. What you call rule by strength is just missing the real foundation." His eyes burned with intensity, as though even the stormy snow could not extinguish the fire within his spirit. Yet Anthony remained unmoved by his passion, simply staring back coldly, the faint, indifferent smile still resting on his lips. Then, from behind the screen, a noble figure let out a soft hum. Whether in agreement or disdain was unclear. Anthony knew his goal had been achieved, so he no longer pressed further. Instead, he sighed faintly. "Yet what you say is hardly more than a dream of the powerless toward those in power, dreaming of mercy from those above, dreaming that one's suffering would finally be seen, that someone would come to save them. How absurd! Gabriel, how could you be so naive?" In the study, silence settled like a blanket. Only the wind howling through the window frames broke the stillness. Gabriel's gaze dimmed slightly. He looked at Anthony, as if seeing beyond the cold, striking surface to something deeper within. But Anthony had already lowered his head, absorbed in turning the pages of his book. Like their heated exchange had been mere idle words, leaving no trace worth keeping. Yet despite everything, Gabriel harbored no ill will toward him. By evening, He even brought 2 jars of wine to visit personally. Anthony couldn't understand why the man acted as if nothing had happened. He tried to close the door, but Gabriel's leg was already wedged inside. So he resigned himself and let him in. Gabriel leaned back in the wooden chair, his slender fingers lifting the wine jug and pouring 2 cups. He raised his glass, scanning the cold expression across from Anthony, then spoke aloud. "Anthony, today truly opened my eyes. I thought you'd avoid debates like this." Anthony didn't respond right away, but instead asked, "Do you really believe your ideals could ever take root in such a corrupt world?" As he spoke, he leaned forward slightly, pressing his hands on the table. His striking eyes shimmered under the flickering candlelight, glowing with intensity. His voice dropped low, as if fearing even the wind might overhear. "The heavens are high and power is absolute. Ordinary lives are worth nothing. Your words sound noble enough, but in a world where hearts sink into mud, who truly cares about clarity or kindness?" His crimson lips moved gently, revealing the soft tip of his tongue behind white teeth. Slender and sharp, like a serpent's flicker, thick with unseen danger, Gabriel remained unmoved by the attempt to sway him. In the dancing candlelight, his gaze grew brighter. He fixed his eyes on Anthony, speaking with firm resolve, each word clear and steady. "Anthony, it's precisely because the world is so dark that we need someone to hold on to clarity. If everyone gave up like you suggest, accepting their fate beneath layers of dirt, then this world would never know true light again." Anthony paused, then let out a quiet laugh. "Gabriel, you truly are an odd one. I hope you never end up regretting this." Cut. With Mason's call to stop, the set instantly settled into calm. Crew members began busily checking equipment, while actors went their separate ways. Derek quickly darted out of the camera's focus and snatched the down jacket Jack handed him, pulling it on in a hurry. Levi watched him shiver several times, then blow warm air onto his reddened hands for half a minute before finally rubbing them together and moving over to the monitor. Mason had just taken a phone call and disappeared somewhere. The 2 of them crouched one behind the other in front of the monitor to go over the recent performance. Before long, a close-up of Derek's facial expression appeared on screen. In the shot, his features and subtle expressions were magnified to the extreme. Eyebrows slightly lifted, dark thick lashes, deep black pupils radiating an intense coldness that felt hard to look at directly, like a serpent's eyes from the depths of a dark pit. Just one glance sent a chill down your spine, as if a hidden venomous snake was ready to strike and crush its prey's neck at any moment. Yet there was something strangely captivating about it. Levi suddenly let out a quiet laugh. Derek looked up at him curiously and asked, "What's wrong, man? Have you ever heard a saying like this?" Derek had no idea what he meant. Levi opened his mouth as if to speak, but before he could say a word, he heard Mason's loud footsteps approaching from behind. "Let him die. That second-rate movie has ruined his mind. I'm not changing a thing. Let him pull out if he wants to. Does he really think I can't make this film without him?" After finishing, Mason tossed his phone into the assistant's hands. Then he rushed forward like a whirlwind, crashing into Levi's arms and wailing with a pouty voice, "If I go all in on this film, will you divorce me, honey?" The speed of his mood shift was truly astonishing. One of the investors' 4 wind rises through the long night has withdrawn funding. The reason was that this investor, on a whim, glanced at the script and decided that such serious political drama didn't fit current market trends and would surely fail at the box office, losing everything. So he called Mason directly, asking him to add more focus on Gabriel and Anthony's relationship, dig deeper into Anthony's connection with the Crown Prince, and even include some suggestive scenes to attract audiences, while also using the chance to insert his own people. Mason immediately rolled his eyes and shot back a sharp reply. He stood his ground, but the money was truly gone. After a long cry in Levi's arms, Mason began to wonder if something had gone wrong during the launch ceremony, and flew all the way to Jintai Temple for another prayer. The withdrawal was no small matter, though nobody said it outright. The atmosphere on set grew increasingly tense. After filming for several days, Derek could clearly feel the heavy mood across the team. Mason sat behind the monitor with dark circles under his eyes and a short temper. Nobody dared to approach him except Levi. His mood was indeed low, but he didn't lash out at others much. Derek had several takes that didn't go well, yet Mason never said a harsh word. Besides venting angrily during breaks about the investor who vanished, he was still fairly composed as a boss. Yet, with funding tightening due to the withdrawal, the crew's quality of life dropped noticeably. Meals were cut first. What started as 3 dishes and a soup became 2 dishes and a soup, then finally just 1 dish and a soup depending on what the chef could manage. The amount of meat in lunch boxes kept shrinking, while vegetables and rice took center stage. Since the budget for sets and costumes couldn't be reduced, cuts had to come from elsewhere. What's this today? Vegetable and tofu soup? Jack sat in the corner with his tray, poking at the edge of his bowl while sighing. If things keep going like this, I'll have to borrow a meal from some classmates on the neighboring set. Derek scraped the bottom of his lunchbox, thinking maybe he'd sneak out tonight for a quick bite. He was starting to struggle with this routine. Derek, don't even say it. Our neighboring historical romance drama might be overly dramatic, but they've got real money. Today, their crew is having a seafood buffet. Derek couldn't help but feel a little hungry hearing that. He pulled his down jacket tighter around himself, watching Levi approach with the same lunchbox, then pretended to pout. Guess my grad school friend was right. Stay away from on-screen couples. That advice really holds up no matter what job you're in. Levi knew he was joking and didn't take offense, just gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder before sitting down beside him. All right, I've asked my assistant to grab coffee. Treats for all of you this afternoon. Derek dramatically covered his face with both hands. You won't feed me properly, then hand me some cheap energy drink like it's a reward. What kind of plan is that? Levi smirked slightly, dragging out the words playfully. Just got through calming down one drama queen. Now I've got to handle another one? Derek looked up, pretending to glare at him before quickly pulling out his phone. Wait here. I'll create a side account and plant some subtle hints. Just wait till someone accidentally uncovers it later and uses it to publicly call you out. Levi just shrugged. Didn't you already post a complaint on your social feed yesterday? When he said that, Derek suddenly remembered last night's meal, which was utterly unappetizing. Most actors with some fame bring their own meals when joining a production, but Derek didn't want to spend the money and also didn't think he was too delicate. Though he had often brought Jack extra food during the filming of The Bluebird, most of the time he still ate what was provided by the crew. But these past few days, the lunch boxes were truly making him feel uneasy. Tasteless and dull, just like the food at their high school cafeteria. So he secretly vented on social media. To his annoyance, William was the first to respond with a smug comment, which only made Derek furious. He deleted the post right away, but Derek never expected this discomfort would end so soon. By morning of the next day, the entire set had completely transformed. The barrels of water once lined up on set were now replaced with a freshly brewed coffee machine. The usually sluggish crew members and camera operators were suddenly full of energy, gathering around the machine tinkering with it. Mason's dark circles had faded significantly, and his whole demeanor brightened up. He looked as vibrant and confident as he did when he won his award years ago. Derek went through makeup without understanding what was going on. Later, from other actors, he heard that a mysterious investor had suddenly joined the team, pouring in a large sum of money and bringing along various improvements. Still unaware of the truth, he joked with Levi during a break. Golden Temple really didn't disappoint me. Maybe I should visit it too next time, wishing for a life free from stress and a happy exit from the industry. Levi glanced at him and said, Maverick mentioned he had met this investor before, but they didn't reach an agreement. No one knows why the investor suddenly reached out to him yesterday. Derek felt a strange unease creeping in. He quietly pulled out his phone, scrolling through WeChat moments with no new updates. Then he glanced toward Mason, who was directing crew members setting up the stage from afar, and then back at Levi, calmly sipping coffee. You know, this coffee machine makes a surprisingly good brew, Levi said. Suddenly, Derek remembered. Edwin's home had the same brand of coffee machine. That couldn't be a coincidence, could it? What exactly caused the disagreement back then? I'm not entirely sure, Levi replied. Probably just that they found the production timeline too long and expected a lower return on investment. You know how it is, Most people nowadays prefer fast return projects. Who'd want to wait around while you polish something artistic? The more Derek thought about it, the weirder it seemed, so he pressed on. Is Mason really close with this investor? Not particularly. Last night, he called saying he was ready to invest and offered a bundle of extra resources. He promised that as long as the film's overall vision stayed intact and filming went smoothly, he wouldn't interfere with creative decisions and had no additional demands. After some thought, Maverick figured it was too good to pass up. So he headed over right away to sign the agreement and came back. Considering Mason's energetic mood this morning, it was hard to believe he hadn't slept a wink. Derek gave a gesture of admiration. By the way, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Levi paused, saying, we've been searching for a musician for the palace banquet scene all along. This morning, William's team reached out. Derek froze, blurting out, can he act? Levi's gaze swept over his face, half smile, half quirk. I didn't expect your first reaction would be that. Derek looked confused. Then what should I have said? Levi shook his head. Maybe I've read too many rumors lately. I just can't help but think he has ulterior motives, but Maverick did mention his acting ability. William's team said he's been taking classes recently and even brought funding to the project. But surprisingly, Derek's first thought was, hard to believe Mason flew all the way just for this. Does Jintai Temple really work that well? Maybe he should find a time to go there too and grab some of Mason's incredible luck. Levi let out a soft chuckle. As long as you're not bothered, since Anthony has plenty of scenes with the musician. You mean the scene where the prince's shady past gets exposed, and then he's silenced by a swift blade across his throat. Derek said flatly, that's not bad at all. I've noticed you've been acting out Anthony being mistreated lately, and you've looked like you were about to burst from frustration. Derek rubbed his hands together. You're right. Especially with these barely there meals, I'm starting to feel completely worn out, just waiting for my chance to turn things around and take control, really make my mark. I've already rehearsed the movements and expressions for that dramatic moment a few times. He'd let loose all the frustration he's been holding in over these past few days, and if needed, he could add in everything from before too. Break time was over, and under the crew's direction, both men returned to their positions. Derek had assumed that once the funding was sorted out, lunch today would return to its usual standard. But after filming all morning and dragging his tired body back to the canteen, he froze in shock at what he saw. A long table filled with delicious dishes, aromatic roasted chicken, steaks, stir-fried shrimp, fresh sashimi, and desserts and fruits piled high. Like a whole gourmet kitchen team had been brought straight from a top restaurant. He'd actually underestimated it. The crew members were stunned as they queued up for food, whispering among themselves, who paid for this? Did Mason finally succeed in raising funds? Derek even started wondering if he was just imagining things from hunger. The air was thick with the scent of roasting meat and sweet desserts, flooding straight into his exhausted stomach, already worn down by days of plain crew meals. Derek eagerly pushed his way in, grabbed a tray, loaded up on grilled chicken and vegetables, scooped a generous helping of what looked like delicious cream soup, and kept one ear open to overhear the crew members' gossip. I heard this meal was arranged directly by the new investor, who wished for it to stay at this quality every single day. I wish that were true, but where did Mason even find the funding? He's been so mysterious about it all. Could it be him? The speaker lowered their voice slightly. I heard William is coming to shoot a scene. Probably a gift from the Moo family for the young master. After all, this is his first time, so they wouldn't want to skimp on the treatment. But isn't William's connection with the Moo group usually pretty weak? Still, couldn't possibly be anyone else, could it? Derek felt a sudden jolt. Could he have actually been right all along? Sure enough, just a few minutes later, he received a message from Edwin. How's it tasting? Derek stared at the message, and in an instant, everything clicked into place. He held his phone tightly, his expression mixed as he replied. It really is you. Yes, James said your crew was about to run out of food. Derek replied. It's not that extreme. I only mentioned the food hasn't been very good lately. You shouldn't have to post about it with a heavy heart today. Derek let out a small laugh and typed, I'll speak for the whole crew. Thanks to Edwin for stepping in and saving us from hardship. Edwin took a while to respond, but instead of replying to Derek's message, he said, I'd like to visit the set tomorrow. I heard the costumes and makeup this time are even more stunning than last time. Derek didn't expect Austin to show up at the filming location. He had been waiting for Edwin. Actually, he wasn't exactly waiting for Edwin. Last night's message had kept him tossing and turning all night. Even if he didn't want to admit it, Derek still felt that Edwin might have a bit of something. For him, he was afraid the same thing from the Bluebird set would happen again and wanted to decline, but he worried it would seem overly dramatic. He finally made it to morning, nervously filming several scenes in a row without catching sight of Edwin. He couldn't quite put his finger on what he was feeling. Disappointed, maybe, but then thought maybe Austin would show up unexpectedly, just like before. He had just finished filming the scene where Anthony was humiliated, and for once got a few hours of free time. He crouched at a spot with a great view outside the set, peeling an orange. But before he'd even finished half of it, he heard commotion coming from beyond the studio. Derek looked up at the sound and spotted a familiar figure. It wasn't Edwin, it was Austin. He wore a light beige coat, and a dark scarf fluttered gently in the winter wind. Though he had an assistant trailing behind him, he still held something in his hands. Seemed like a bucket at first glance, which didn't quite match his usual calm demeanor, yet somehow gave off a warm, homey vibe. Derek couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. You have to admit, the two of them are totally different in style. No surprise they ended up as rivals right from the start. What are you doing here? Derek asked. Suddenly, it hit him, and he asked with a smirk. You're not here to bring in Capital 2, are you? Austin smiled and shook his head, his gentle features softened by the warm light of the winter morning. I'm here for a schedule call. I got a variety show filming nearby, and I'm also doing a little errand, Austin said, lifting the thermos in his hand and gesturing toward Derek, then placing it gently on the desk. He lowered his voice. Mom saw your social media post. She asked the housekeeper to make this specially, and sent me over to bring it for you to keep up your strength. Derek hesitantly asked, She saw my post too? Austin chuckled. As soon as you posted, we noticed it. She was actually considering donating to your team so you'd have better meals. But then she reached out to Mason's assistant and found out there's already a new investor. Still too late. Derek picked up the thermos, cradling it in his arms and opening the lid. The rich aroma of chicken soup instantly filled the air, and he swallowed hard. Not too late. Anything that ends up in my stomach is on time. Austin glanced down at him and let out a soft laugh. Your show starts when? Want to join us for lunch today? Heard they're serving roasted shrimp. Austin opened his mouth, about to say, how about I take Mom's place and treat you to a meal instead? Before he could speak, William's clear voice rang out from nearby. Derek, this is my first time filming. I'm completely unfamiliar with everything. Did you really just leave me behind? Don't you know what hospitality means? William had probably just finished his costume fitting, still wearing the elaborate robes of a court musician. His long hair was neatly tied up, revealing a smooth forehead and striking features, while the well-fitted attire accentuated his slender frame, but with the arrogant expression on his face, like he owned half the world. He came across less like a refined scholar musician and more like a bold warrior. Derek suddenly thought the role of court musician wasn't quite right for him. It would have been better if he'd been cast as a clumsy guard standing by Anthony's side and the prince's, just so fans could spot fun Easter eggs during the movie release. Adding extra buzz without effort. Since their appearance on Create Youth Talent Show, the three of them had barely shared a frame together, and things only grew more complicated after that strange dynamic drew public attention. William boldly stepped right in front of him, instantly drawing all eyes from nearby crew members. Faint whispers buzzed around like cicadas on a summer night, but the three main people didn't seem to care. William shook his costume lightly, then glanced at Austin and asked, What are you doing here? Austin nodded gently. Just happened to pass by. I'm bringing something for my brother. Derek replayed that word, brother, in his mind a few times, feeling something off about it, but he quickly dismissed it as just unfamiliarity and didn't say anything more. He couldn't help but wonder how far Austin and William's on-screen chemistry had progressed. Several key moments had already been disrupted by his presence, leaving him uncertain about where their relationship stood now. Maybe he should just slip away quietly and let them figure it out on their own. But before he could take a single step, William turned his head and asked in a slightly annoyed tone, "Where are you going?" Derek froze for a moment, then stopped mid-motion, turning around with an innocent expression. "Nothing much. I just wanted to take a quick walk to clear my head." William stepped forward and blocked his path, leaning casually on the table. "Here we are, two guests standing around. Now you're trying to slip away. Not even willing to show me around a bit." Derek raised an eyebrow, suppressing the urge to roll his eyes, and gave a half-smile. "You do you. Just leave Austin out of it. And honestly, this request is pretty high-handed. You just joined the team and already want personal attention. Being a guide comes with its own fees. What makes you think a young master like you can get away with free service?" Derek muttered bitterly in his thoughts. William flicked his eyes upward, clearly unimpressed. "You want me to wander around aimlessly as a newcomer? I'm not just anyone. I'm your senior at the company. Do you even realize how many people will give you respectful treatment today because of my presence?" Derek shot back. "You know our crew group chat name is Family United and Happy, right? Be careful what you say. Mason might send his bird after you." "What on earth are you talking about? It means our crew gets along really well, so stop spreading rumors." Kid, he'd never seen such a peaceful working relationship in his life. Thanks to Mason. Derek turned to Austin with a look that said it all, hesitating for a few seconds before finally saying, "Maybe we should just call it off." Austin looked confused. "What?" Derek let out a sigh, staring at Austin's face for several seconds before shaking his head in resignation. "Never mind. Let's just go get something to eat. Wonder if the restaurant has served yet." "I'm not interested in eating at a restaurant," William said lazily, half leaning on the table as he pointed first at himself and then at Austin. "It's my first time acting. This guy traveled all the way here just to deliver something for you. Don't you owe us a meal?" Derek countered. "Didn't you say yourself last time that even if I wanted to treat you, you didn't want to eat anyway?" William said firmly, "I've changed my mind. I think this meal might actually be worth having." Austin's gaze drifted over William's face before shifting back to Derek. "Or maybe I'll treat you both. I've eaten at a small place nearby during a shoot before, and the food was pretty good." With a slight twitch of his lips, he gave William a half-smile. "It's just a bit plain." William might not be used to places like that, probably wouldn't want to join us anyway. Derek suddenly felt like giving Austin a round of applause, but William didn't seem to mind Austin's mention of the modest setting, raising one eyebrow as he said, "I don't mind at all. I'm fine with whatever. Thanks. I'm not really." Before he could finish, another voice cut in. "I thought today was just a plan between the two of us." Derek never expected things to turn out this way. He'd only wanted to finish filming quietly, grab a meal, handle the brief interaction with Edwin when he arrived, and then head back to his room for a nap. Yet somehow it had turned into a dramatic scene straight out of a soap opera. As he ladled soup into bowls, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Maybe he really was born to attract intense situations. The moment these four people were together was clearly more thrilling than the drama they were currently filming. He glanced at Edwin sitting beside him, wearing a high-quality gray-black turtleneck sweater, layered with a sleek black leather coat. Black gloves covered his hands, folded neatly across his lap, giving off an air of calm elegance. Although Derek always thought Edwin looked perfect in dark tones, he still preferred the woolen coat Edwin wore on New Year's Eve. So refined and aloof, almost untouchable, but just one slight lift of his eyelids toward him was enough to make someone's knees go weak. Noticing Derek's lingering gaze, Edwin turned his head slightly to look at him. Derek smiled, passed the bowl of soup to him, then settled back into his seat. Austin's recommended restaurant was a bit plain in appearance, but the rich aroma of cooking food filled the air with an unexpectedly comforting warmth. Austin had spoken to the owner ahead of time, so they were seated in a semi-open booth by the window. Outside lay an old alleyway. Winter sunlight after rain shimmered on the cobblestones, and the shadows of osmanthus trees swayed gently, adding a quiet sense of ease to the moment. If it weren't for these three sitting at the same table with him, his mood might have been much better. This couldn't even be scripted in a TV drama. He thought, these three seemed to each hold their own stance. Eyes flicking between one another now and then without anyone speaking first, as if playing some odd version of statues. Though no tension was openly visible, Derek could almost hear the quiet sparks flying through the air. It was too strange. He felt like he couldn't breathe properly. Derek sighed, glanced down at his soup, and quietly took a sip. Hey Derek, why didn't you share your soup with me? William spoke up first, tone edged with mild annoyance and a hint of hurt. Why do the other two get some but not me? Derek grumbled, I can't reach. Can't you just turn the bowl yourself? William was momentarily speechless, but quickly shifted his eyes and pushed his empty bowl toward Derek with a bold tone. How could you be so clueless about basic hospitality? I'm not leaving until you serve me. He looked up, about to speak, when Edwin suddenly cut in. What are you even doing here? Upon hearing that, William's domineering attitude sharpened. He sat up straight, crossed his arms, and let out a cold scoff. I'm here for my job. Filming this project. What's it to you? And I haven't asked what asterisk you're asterisk doing here. What are you even after? Edwin glanced at him briefly, voice calm and steady. You tell me. With that, he reached out and grabbed Derek's hand, letting out a quiet chuckle. Never realized you cared so much about my personal life. William watched as Edwin's fingers gently parted Derek's grip, his own hand settling over the back of Derek's, and his expression darkened slightly before he rolled his eyes in clear irritation. Derek pulled his fingers back slightly, feeling like the scene unfolding before him was like two stubborn lions circling each other. Except the prey, that doesn't make sense. Derek shot a quick glance toward Austin, hoping the calm and composed lead actor would step in to ease the tension. But Austin remained serene, sipping his soup, glancing briefly at the two brothers with no visible reaction on his face. But when he noticed Derek's gaze, he gave a slight curve to his lips and asked, Shall we order now? Everything's gone haywire. Completely out of control. Derek stared at Edwin holding his hand, feeling like his mind was struggling to keep up. Let's just order then, he murmured awkwardly. These few dishes here are their signature favorites. Want to give one a try? Austin spoke gently, his expression still calm and composed, but his eyes didn't linger on anyone else as he passed the menu toward Derek. Derek glanced quickly over the list, but all his focus was now on the warm sensation against his wrist. He hadn't even registered what he'd pointed at and replied offhand, How about the osmanthus fish and dry pot chicken? I don't like dry pot. William suddenly spoke up. Pick something else. All right, then how about braised pork? Derek forced himself not to roll his eyes. It's too heavy. I don't like it either, Edwin added quietly. Just then, Derek couldn't help but wonder if he was imagining things. His soft flesh near his little finger felt briefly brushed, making him shiver. He glanced over at Edwin, who looked completely calm, as if nothing had happened. How about stir-fried greens instead? They're really healthy. Derek forced a smile, feeling his facial muscles strain to the point of cramping. The moment he said that, William burst out laughing. You really know how to pick. Meat's what I want. None of us are monks here. Now Austin joined in, teasing. I don't mind either, but eating veggies regularly might actually help you stay calm and focused. William, you should give it a try. If anyone needs to be more reserved, it's him. He was ready to kick these three troublemakers out right then. Seeing the atmosphere grow increasingly awkward, Derek finally couldn't hold back. He slammed his hand on the table, drawing everyone's attention instantly. All right. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his tone from sounding angry. I'll handle ordering. No more arguing. If anyone talks back, I'm getting the most expensive dishes and charging them all to you. The sudden outburst startled the three of them, and they both fell silent at once. The private dining room fell into a brief pause. Derek rubbed his temples, feeling drained. Just having dinner. Why does it have to be like this? Then he lowered his voice slightly and whispered to Edwin. You might want to pull your hand back. It's hard for me to order with that going on. Edwin gave him a quiet look, and after a few seconds, he slowly released his hold. Derek was just about to relax when suddenly Edwin leaned forward across the table, then whispered something into his ear. Derek froze in place, Then Edwin said, "Let go, don't be upset." Derek stiffened, quickly covering his ear and pulling back. But thanks to his sudden outburst, the tension eased a little. Derek focused on the menu to order food, when William suddenly spoke up again after a short silence. "Don't just go for those plain dishes. Order more Sichuan-style ones. You do like spicy food, don't you?" Derek blinked in surprise. "How did you know I like Sichuan food?" William realized he might have slipped up, but always proud and unwilling to admit it, he shrugged nonchalantly. "You've been on so many trending lists from that live stream. How could I not know? It's impossible to miss." "Oh," Derek nodded, but a faint unease stirred in his mind. "Still, go for a few lighter dishes," Austin said. "Mom says you've always had a sensitive stomach since childhood, with the heavy schedule from *wind rising through long nights*. What if spicy food upsets you? And wasn't it not long after that live stream when you got all inflamed?" Derek frowned. "Wait, when was that? I saw the photo you two posted on social media during your script reading session. Wasn't your mouth all red and swollen?" "That wasn't from being overheated." "It was." Derek's mind suddenly went blank with shock. He turned his head sharply, giving Edwin a look full of quiet accusation. But Edwin just looked back, clearly not recalling what had happened that night, his expression still tinged with confusion when their eyes met. "It wasn't from being overheated," Derek said quickly, his face suddenly flushed. "I just accidentally bit it." Austin noticed the discomfort in his tone and glanced between him and Edwin, a flicker of understanding passing through his eyes before he let it go without pressing further. Edwin, meanwhile, stared at Derek's lips as if lost in thought, but Derek didn't catch their reactions. He just focused on choosing a few spicy Sichuan dishes from the menu, then added some signature items Austin had recommended, before passing it to the server. Soon after, the dishes arrived one by one. Derek finally felt that long-awaited sense of calm. "This fish is also one of their signature dishes. It's really fresh. Give it a try," Austin said, scooping a small bowl and passing it toward him. Derek had just picked up a piece of spicy kidney slices and stuffed it into his mouth when he heard Austin's voice. Startled, he didn't react in time and ended up coughing hard from the heat. "Be careful," Edwin said, just as he handed him a drink. At that moment, Austin also passed over a napkin. Derek coughed awkwardly twice, took the cup, downed it in one go, then thanked both of them. William, sitting across from him, made a dismissive sound. "Can't even eat a dish without choking. Still have the nerve to call others childish?" He didn't believe it and grabbed several thick pieces of kidney slices anyway, shoving them into his mouth with gusto, only to cough worse than Derek. "Edwin, don't look at me. I'm not related to him. Who cares? Do you really think I'd choose to treat you like a brother or anything?" Derek quietly pushed the drink on the table toward him, sighing with mild frustration. "Why don't you drink something first before talking?" William quickly opened a can of soda and guzzled down a big gulp. After coughing several times, he finally calmed down. He slumped back in his seat, took a deep breath, turned the plate around, and said, "All right, this stuff is seriously spicy. Just stick to the fish." Austin pushed the white porcelain bowl slightly closer to him again. "The fish has bones," he reminded. "Be careful." Edwin's brow twitched almost imperceptibly, and without saying anything further, he picked up his chopsticks and scooped a spoonful of tofu for Derek. His voice was calm as he said, "This one tastes good too. Gentle on the stomach. Here we go again." He suddenly felt like prying open their heads to see if someone had secretly rewritten their scripts with strange new instructions.